Hello friends, this is your friend back with new fanfic. What if Naruto's sister got the fox and he got would release? If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's start. Chapter 1. The night that started it all. Today was October 10th, the day most had recognized as any other ordinary day, just like any other, as the citizens and shinobi of Konoha settled down and began to drift to sleep as the midnight slowly began to approach them. However, none of the residents of Konoha were prepared for the surprise attack by none other than the nine-tailed demon fox. Roaring as loudly as it could, it began to tear into the village as its shinobi began to rush towards the fox and protect their homes and families. As that happened, the village civilians as well as the younger generation of leaf shinobi were taken underground, though the younger shinobis against their will since they wanted to protect their homes. "We can help fight, don't make just sit stand here and watch," a 17-year-old raven-haired girl with red eyes declared as a man of similar features stood a little in front of her, just out of reach of the barrier they were being kept behind. "This fight is for the older generation. If we fail, then it will be up to you, the younger generation, to carry on our will of fire and protect the village." "Kurenai," he said, looking at the raven-haired girl. "Become a great kunoichi and makes me a proud father and a proud grandfather one day," he said before he disappeared into a swirl of leaves, intent on joining the fight to protect the leaf from the rampaging Biju. Kurenai shook a little angrily as her father left and let a stray tear go down her face before a hand placed itself on her shoulder. Looking over her shoulder, she saw Asuma Sarutobi, a 17-year-old recently promoted jonin, give her a look that said, "Believe in him and follow his words." Not liking it, she nodded her head in agreement despite still not liking it. Beside her, her fellow graduation class members and current Anbu Kakashi Hatake and his self-proclaimed eternal rival Might Guy stood there silently as they observed the beast attacking their home with emotionless looks on their face. Despite that, she knew they, along with everyone else, all had the same feeling of wanting to do their duty and not feel so useless against the Kyuubi. As they observed and watched, a small whimper came from behind them, making them turn around and made their eyes soften. Standing behind them was little 5-year-old Naruto Namikaze, still wearing his blue pajamas with little shurikens decorating around them and a little gray robe wrapped around him. He looked just like his father, the fourth Hokage, with his tanned skin and blonde hair, and even had a similar personality to him, which made him quite quiet but smart for his age. His eyes, though, were violet just like his mother's Kushina Uzumaki and had bursts of her personality at times. He was born on October 3rd and had just celebrated his 5th birthday a week ago with his father and his heavily pregnant mother, who was expecting twins. His parents adored him and spoilt him to a degree, though they were happy that Naruto never got bratty. He was a very kind, fun-loving though quiet little boy who in return loved his parents very much, especially his mother Kushina. He was very excited when he found out he was going to be a big brother and did his best to help his mother around the house and try to cause her as little trouble and stress as he could. Sometime he even talked to his little siblings in his mother's tummy, which always made Minato and Kushina smile at him proudly. "Where are Ka-chan and Tu-san?" he asked as he watched the fox destroy his home, shifting in his spot a little nervously. Kurenai went down to her knees and picked him up into her arms, trying to soothe him. "Your Ka-chan and Tu-san will be okay, Naruto. Remember, your Tu-san is the strongest in the village and your mother is no pushover either," Kakashi said, trying to lift the boy's spirits. "But Ka-chan has my baby brother and sister in her tummy. What if she gets hurt?" "That won't happen, Naru-chan. Your Tu-san won't let any harm come to them. You have my word on it," she said as Naruto nodded and watched as he nuzzled into the older girl's neck. The rest was silent as they continued to watch as the shinobi of the village tried to push the Kyuubi away but were getting thrown away effortlessly by the fox. Just as it looked like the Nine-Tails was going to storm forward, a large elongated staff hit it square in the stomach and slowly started pushing the fox away and out of the village. When the fox looked to see where it came from, standing on top of one of the buildings was none other than Hiruzen Sarutobi, the 3rd Hokage. "Gigi," Naruto said, just managing to see his grandfather-like figure battle the Kyuubi while the younger generation smiled at the arrival of the powerful leaf shinobi. As he watched the 3rd Hokage battle the Kyuubi with long-range support from some of the other leaf shinobi, Naruto felt 2 strong energy signatures appear nearby and land just beside the 3rd Hokage. Naruto smiled though when he recognized the signatures. Pervy Sage and Ba-chan are here, he said as the Kurenai, Kakashi, Asuma and Guy looked at him in confusion, not entirely sure what he was talking about. As soon as they did, two large plumes of smoke appeared in front of the Kyuubi, revealing a large white slug with blue stripes going down its back and a large purple frog with a shield and Sasumata in its hands. On top of their heads none other than Jiraiya and Tsunade, two of the Leaf Village's Sannin. When they saw Jiraiya and Tsunade begin battling the Kyuubi, the four younger shinobi looked at Naruto in surprise. How did he know they were there? I did not even sense them, they all thought, but left it alone for now and would get back to it later. Jiraiya-kun, Tsunade-chan, Sarutobi greeted a little out of breath as the two Sannin nodded towards him. Sensei. If the Kyuubi is here, I can only guess something went wrong with Kushina's while she was in labor. Jiraiya asked. That seems to be the case. Though I have not seen her or Minato yet, I don't know where they are, but we have to keep the Kyuubi away. No matter what, he said, stealing his voice as they both nodded. However, just as the fox was about to launch an attack towards them, Minato appeared above the Kyuubi's head looking a little beaten up and then disappeared with the Kyuubi in a yellow flash away from the village, making everything suddenly go quiet. Where did they go? Tsunade asked as they began to scanning the areas before they saw a large explosion a few miles out from the village. There, Jiraiya said before the 3-cage level shinobi began running as fast as they could towards the site with the summons following after. The other shinobi watched as the 4th Hokage and Naruto's father vanished with the Kyuubi, making many cheer, though only 4 and a little boy knew it was not over yet. Naruto closed his eyes and searched for his dad. Having never told anyone this, he had always been able to sense where people were. He recognized his parents' signatures like the back of his hand. After a minute of searching he found them outside the village, but he sensed his mother was hurt. It made him want to go to her and stop the Kyuubi from hurting her. He hopped out Kurenai's arms and started running forward, but Kurenai and Kakashi caught him. Naruto, you mustn't. Just because the Kyuubi is not there does not mean it is still not dangerous, Kakashi urged, but the little blonde struggled as Kurenai placed him gently against her chest despite his wriggling. But I have to. Ka-chan is hurt, I know it. She is with San and the Kyuubi. Now that made the others have their eyes widen. He can sense that far away. They thought since they knew the Hokage must have teleported the Kyuubi a fair distance away from the village. The range that Naruto seemed to have of sensing people was vast. Definitely need to look into that on a later date, Asuma said to Kurenai, who nodded since a sensing ability of that magnitude sounded like a real blessing. Have faith, Naru-chan. They will be okay, Kurenai said as Naruto's violet eyes look out across the village. Battle site. Kushina breathed in heavily as multiple chakra chains were shot out of her back and keeping the Kyuubi in its place, while Gamabunta, the chief toad, was on its back trying his best to keep it pinned down. Moments later Minato suddenly flashed in front of her. In his hands was their newborn daughter, one of the beautiful twins his wife had given birth to not long ago. Her body was in pain all over after the Kyuubi was ripped out of her, but she willed herself to stay awake. She could not let her family and the village down. I'm sorry, Kushina, but this is the only way, he said solemnly. If we seal the beast back into you, then you will die, and I can't let that happen. I can't let the twins and Naruto live a life without their mother. Kushina did not like it, but she knew it had to be done. A newborn baby was the best option to seal the beast away in. But to make her children carry such a burden made a dent in her heart. It was a burden she never wanted one of her children to have to hold. How are we going to seal it? Kushina asked as she tried to stand up but felt the Kyuubi struggling against her chakra chains. Though she was a Fuinjutsu master, that were only a few methods of sealing that could contain the nine-tailed fox, and knew there would be a struggle since the Kyuubi no doubt did not want to go back to be sealed away again. I have a plan for that. I can sense Jiraiya-sensei, Tsunade and Sarutobi are on their way here. When they get here we will perform the 4-corner sealing method. Once we get it trapped, I will seal it away with the 8 trigrams. The 4-corner sealing method might not work, Minato. It was designed to hold the Biju up to the 6 tails. The Kyuubi might be too powerful for it, Kushina said, concerned since they only had one shot at this. I know, but with 5-cage level shinobi here and 4 to perform the ritual, it can be done. It will be close, but it can be accomplished. Kushina bit her lip. It was not the best idea, but it could work. The 8 trigrams would definitely hold the Kyuubi, she just hoped the 4-corner barrier seal would be enough. Incoming, Gamabunta shouted as the Kyuubi got one of its claws out of the chains and sent it towards them. I will not be sealed away again, he roared, showing his target was the baby Mito. No, both Minato and Kushina shouted as they jumped in the way to protect their daughter from harm. They waited for the strike to hit but suddenly felt a large shockwave hit them from behind. Looking around they saw Gameken deflected the Kyuubi claw with his shield. Minato, 3 voices called as Hiruzen, Tsunade and Jiraiya appeared beside them. While Gamabunta and Gameken kept the Kyuubi pinned down, Tsunade began to heal Kushina as Minato explained the plan to them all. The 3 newly arrived adults looked down at the baby girl in sadness, knowing she rough patches she was bound to encounter in her life. They did not like it but they knew it had to be done. Does anyone know if Naru-chan is okay? Kushina asked, thinking about her oldest and firstborn. She saw Hiruzen nod his head. Last I checked he was in the protective barrier being looked after by Kakashi, Asuma, Guy and Kurenai. He is safe and is unharmed. Kushina nodded and breathed a little easier knowing her Naruto was safe and had not been caught in the fox's rampage. As Tsunade healed Kushina's body enough for her to move and access her chakra, Hiruzen stood in front of the Kyuubi with the intent of helping keep the Kyuubi at bay while the other 4 took the 4 points around the Kyuubi to begin the sealing. From Minato's spot he placed his hand on the ground and summoned a small altar and gently placed his new daughter on top of it. She was sound asleep, which surprised him from all the noise, but he guessed that was more a good thing. He began drawing on the necessary symbols in blood around the baby and onto the baby girl's stomach. After a moment the seal was ready. Everyone, it's time now, Minato declared as Kushina retracted her chains, which released the 9-tailed fox and made it roar from its spot. Gameken and Gamabunta did their best to keep it down, as did Sarutobi, but the 9 tails was the strongest of the tailed beasts for a reason and was very quickly getting out of their grasp. Minato nodded to everyone as he, Kushina, Jiraiya and Tsunade all prepared and channeled their chakra and made the necessary hand seals. Dog, snake, boar, tiger, 4-corner sealing jutsu, the 4 all shouted as their blue chakra burst from all around them and began to create a large net. The net began to expand before it was big enough to cover the Kyuubi. In each of their hands was kunai that once the net was securely placed around the Kyuubi, they would drive the kunai into the ground and hold the Kyuubi in the sealing barrier. Gameken, Gamabunta and Sarutobi saw the sealing jutsu get activated and quickly jumped out of the way as the sealing barrier began to close in around the Kyuubi and began to wrap around him. No, I will not be sealed again after just getting free, it yelled as it fought against the sealing barrier around it, making the 4-cage level shinobi grit their teeth, while Kushina, who still ached from earlier, had to fight from passing out. Keep going. We need to use more chakra, Minato said to the others, who nodded and gritted their teeth as they all poured out more chakra. The Kyuubi tried to move around, but Hiruzen elongated his adamantine staff and hit the Kyuubi right in the snout, causing it to twitch in surprise. The Kyuubi struggled and struggled, but Gamabunta and Gameken appeared by its side and did slammed into its sides, panicking it between their giant bodies. Take that, you giant fur ball, Gamabunta declared as the net of seals began to cover over the entire giant form of the Kyuubi, despite its declaring that it would not be sealed into some brat. Knowing that the sealing was about to be completed, Sarutobi stood in front of the Kyuubi, looking it straight in its red eyes, not showing a hint of fear even when it turned to stare at him. You are too dangerous to be allowed to roam around freely, he said, making the Kyuubi go wide-eyed at Sarutobi's words as someone familiar from the past said the very same words. Hashirama Senju stood in front of the Kyuubi as the giant fox demon was being pinned down to the ground, with large wooden roots bursting out of the ground which wrapped themselves around the Kyuubi and keeping in submission. The first Hokage looked in the Kyuubi's eyes with a sad but determined look on his face. You are too dangerous to be allowed to roam freely. I am sorry, but to protect the village and this world, this must be done. A snarl ripped from its mouth as the Kyuubi began to struggle against the net of seals, making the 4 sealers have a moment of struggle as it fought against them, but the net had already covered the Kyuubi completely. Kushina drove her kunai into the ground first, signaling she was done, then Tsunade, and then followed by Jiraiya and finally Minato. No, the Kyuubi roared. Minato threw one of his 3-pronged kunai at its head, which when hit dispersed an 8 trigrams seal on top of its head. Minato looked down at his daughter with a sad and apologetic look on his face before he made the necessary hand seals. 8 trigrams seal, he called out as the blood marking and kanjis he made earlier began to move onto the baby's stomach and wrap around in a spiral-like formation with 8 symbols around it. 4 at the top and 4 on the bottom. The Kyuubi's body changed in a giant shroud of orange chakra as it continued to try and break out of the 4-corner sealing barrier, but the 8 trigrams seal appeared on its stomach before it just became a cluster of chakra. Letting out one last roar that seemed to echo and be louder than the rest, the Kyuubi began to get sucked into the 8 trigrams seal on Mito's stomach until eventually the Kyuubi had completely vanished, leaving only the 5 shinobi and a baby left in the area. When it was over, the area was just silent as they all looked at the baby solemnly, thinking how unfair it was that after being born not even an hour ago, she already had to carry such a heavy burden. Mito, Kushina muttered as she went to walk over to her daughter. Though the toll of the sealing and getting the Kyuubi finally began to hit her as she tripped over her feet and collapsed onto the ground, sheer exhaustion taking over. Kushina, Minato called out as Tsunade put the little girl in her arms and watched as Minato ran to his wife. The 4 all appeared around her as Minato rested her gently in his lap with a worried look on his face. Tsunade checked her pulse and her breathing but smiled and breathed out easily. She will be okay. She is just exhausted, which I am not surprised about after what she had been through today. Let's get them both to the hospital. I have the nurses looking after Eiji along with a few Chunin bodyguards to be on the safe side. And we have a private room set up for her which we were going to transfer her to once the twins were birthed, Minato said as Tsunade nodded. Flash her there and make sure to put her straight to bed. She will be weak for a few days but her Uzumaki blood will do the rest. And take me with you so that I can check on the other bae, she said with Minato nodding in agreement as he picked Kushina up bridal style. Minato was about to go before he had a pained look on his face and looked over at Sarutobi. Sarutobi, I am sorry I could not protect Bawako, he said, wanting to send the older Hokage his sympathies. The third got a sad look on his face as he silently mourned his wife's death, but he knew such a thing would have to wait until later. So for now he just nodded his thanks to Minato while Jiraiya patted his sensei's shoulder. Minato as about to flash this time when Tsunade grabbed a hold of his sleeve with Mito still in her arms, but then another thought crossed him. Naruto. Someone will need to collect Naruto. Jiraiya looked ready to offer to get him, but Hiruzen beat him to it. I can do that. I will bring him to the hospital since I am sure he will want to see that his family is safe. Minato nodded his thanks and within a second disappeared in a yellow flash along with Kushina, Tsunade and Mito. No longer needing to stay in the area, Sarutobi and Jiraiya took off back to the village. In village. What's happening? Naruto asked for Kurenai's arms as they watched as the barrier that was stopping them from leaving disappeared and a few of the Chunin and Jonin that fought against the Kyuubi appeared in front of them. They explained how the Kyuubi was defeated, though they never said how. It did not matter though, since the younger generation all cheered. The only one who was not cheering was little Naruto, who just wanted to find his Ka-chan and Tu-san. Naruto the young boy heard as he looked over from all the chattering around him to see Sarutobi approaching him. Gigi. Naruto cried as he jumped out of Kurenai's arms and jumped into the embrace of the old Hokage. Where is Ka-chan and Tu-san? Are they okay? He asked with tears threatening to spill again. Sarutobi soothed him and calmed him down as best he could, but he knew the boy wanted to see she parents. They are fine, Naruto. They are at the hospital with Tsunade, Jiraiya and your baby brother and sister. Naruto's eyes went a little wide when he heard brother and sister, and it only made him want to get there quicker. Your mother will most likely be asleep, so remember to be quiet when we get there since today has been very taxing for her, he said as Naruto quickly nodded his head. When he did, Sarutobi said goodbye and thanked Kurenai, Asuma, Guy and Kakashi for watching over him in this time of need and quickly set off for the hospital. It did not take him long though. When he did get to the hospital, it was all in a rush as stretchers with people being carried on it were brought in and some of the nurses working on the injured in the lobbies or in the hallways. He spotted Tsunade's apprentice Shizune ordering a few nurses while helping a young Kunoichi, quickly showing how far her studies with Tsunade were coming along. Are all these people going to be okay, Gigi? Naruto asked, looking around all the hurt shinobi. Eventually they will. They had a hard-fought battle tonight and lot of people got hurt because of it. However, we have some of the best doctors around in Konoha, as well as Tsunade, so they will be back on their feet in no time, he said as Naruto nodded. They walked up a few flights of stairs before they arrived at the prenatal zone. Naruto saw a few of the pregnant women around who had been sent to the hospital to make sure their babies were okay. One of which was his mother's friend Hitomi Hyuga, who as far as he knew was expecting a young girl. Leaving that little area, Sarutobi walked them down a quiet corridor before stopping at the third on the right. "Here we go," Sarutobi said to Naruto as he opened the door and walked inside. As soon as they walked in, he spotted his father with Jiraiya and Tsunade in the corner of the room talking with serious expression on their faces. He saw they were all looking tired, especially Minato, and his clothes were ripped in a few places, and he rubbed his eyes a little. "To-san," Naruto quietly called, remembering what Sarutobi about him needing to be quiet. He saw Minato look in his direction and a smile appear on his face. "Naru-chan," he said, leaving the corner and taking his son from Sarutobi. "I missed you too, San. I thought you and Ka-chan were hurt," Naruto said, beginning to sob as his father held him close and soothed him as best he could. "It's okay, Naru-chan. Your Ka-chan and I are made of some pretty strong stuff. It will take more than that overgrown fuzzball to hurt us," he said, trying to make his son smile, though he just sobbed a little harder. Wanting to calm his son down, he made Naruto look at him. "Hey Naruto-chan, would you like to see your new baby brother and sister?" he asked. Naruto's eyes went a little wide but nodded his head. Minato smiled and led his Naruto over to the other side of the room. Naruto turned his head and saw Kushina sleeping on the bed with her red hair swept onto one side. "Ka-chan," he said, looking at her. "She is okay, Naruto. She has had a long and tiring night and just need the rest. I know she was very worried about you, but I know she will be very happy to see you in the morning," Minato said as they reached who they were looking for. Situated next to Kushina's bed was a cot with two little bundles sleeping peacefully inside. One was wrapped in a blue blanket while the other was in blue. The little boy had tanned skin like Naruto and Minato and had blonde hair but could see small red streak in it. The little girl had similar hair like her twin, but her skin was a lighter shade like Kushina's. However, Naruto noticed that on her cheeks she had whisker-like marks. Though he and his little brother has similar marks, the ones on his sister were more noticeable and definer. "Naru-chan, I would like you to meet your brother and sister Eiji and Mito Uzumaki Namikaze." Minato leaned down with Naruto still in his arms and towards the sleeping twins. Naruto gasped a little as he looked at his younger siblings and outstretched his right hand and gently stroked his sister's cheek. "Mito-chan," he said as a smile made its way onto his face. Minato, Jiraiya, Tsunade and Sarutobi smiled as they watched Naruto interact with his two new siblings. After such a long day and after all the tragic occurrences that had happened, it was good to finally see something good happen, considering the twins' birth, which should have been a joyous moment, was interrupted by a madman and the attack. He did the same with Eiji and laughed when the baby wrinkled his nose from the contact. "To-san, can I hold them?" Naruto asked, looking his father in the eyes. Minato smiled and nodded. "Okay, but one at a time," he said as he put Naruto down and the boy sat on a nearby chair. Minato gently picked up Mito and walked towards Naruto. "Remember to be careful of her head," he said to his oldest son, who nodded and gently put her in Naruto's arm. Tsunade and Jiraiya sat beside him looking down at the little girl. Her tiny little body lay against Naruto's as she rested in his arms, though since he was only 5 she also laid across his lap. "Hi Mito-chan, I'm your big brother, Naruto," he said, making the others smile as Minato watched him with Eiji resting in his arms. Just as he spoke, Mito's eyes began to flicker before she opened her eyes, revealing a pair of blue eyes looking up at him. "She has your eyes too, San," he said, looking up at his dad, who was now a little in front of him. "It seems she doesn't. It looks like Eiji has the same eyes too," he said, showing that Eiji was awake as well now and showing his similar blue as well. Naruto looked down at his sister and saw she was looking up at him with a curious expression on her face, as if she was trying to figure out who he was. After the two looked like they were having a staring competition with each other, Mito then giggled a soft yet melody-like laugh that made everyone smile. "I think she likes you, Naru-chan," Minato said, laughing a little. "What's not to like about my little Naru-chan?" a tired voice said, making them turn around to see Kushina with her eyes open and looking at the scene with a smile on her face. Kushina, the adults all said, surprised to see her awake, while Naruto looked at his mother and a new set of tears began to form. He gave Mito to Tsunade, who happily took the little girl before he made his way towards Kushina. "Ka-chan," he said as he crawled onto her bed and lay next to her. "Naru-chan, don't cry. Everything is okay," she said softly, but quickly found him hugging into her side. She kissed the top of his head and wrapped her arms around him. "I thought you got hurt, Ka-chan. I was worried," he sobbed as Kushina rubbed his back soothingly in circles, trying to calm her down. "I felt you in Tucson and you felt hurt with the big vile horrible chakra nearby," he said, catching the attention of everyone in the room. "Naruto, what do you mean you felt everyone?" Minato asked, looking at his son with a curious expression. "I don't know how to describe it. I could just feel where everyone was. I could feel when Pervy Sage and Ba-chan appeared on their big animals, and I could feel you and Ka-chan were out of the village." "Naru-chan can describe what you felt when you sensed your parents?" Sarutobi asked, getting a little intrigued about this information. "Well, I could feel Tucson and he felt calm but worried and a little scared. Ka-chan felt warm but tired and frustrated. Then there was that big chakra that just felt so big. Like there was no end to it and felt so dark." Everyone was surprised at what Naruto described. "A sensor," Jiraiya said, surprised. "Naruto has some kind of sensor-like ability. And to feel the two of you almost 2 miles away from the village means it is powerful and has a long range." Both Minato and Kushina looked at Naruto a little proudly, though they did feel a little worried. They were not going to begin training him until he was 6, but now that these sensor-like abilities had revealed themselves, they knew it was time to start a year early. Plus, by the large chakra he said he could feel, they knew it was the Kyuubi he felt. However, they were not sure how to train him since they knew they were going to be extremely busy with the twins, Mito being a jinchūriki and making sure the seal is function correct. Plus there was healing the village from the damage of the attack. The adults began to talk to each other about Naruto's surprising new ability and the events of the night, not seeing Naruto slowly falling asleep in his mother's embrace. Chapter 2. The First Step. Life in the Leaf Village slowly began to return to normal a month after the attack, as the civilians and shinobi of the Leaf worked together to fix the damage the Kyuubi had caused. Most of the building that had been destroyed was at the front half of the village, leaving the back half mostly unscathed, which thankfully included the hospital, the academy, the graveyard and most of the shinobi clan compounds. The only clan compounds that had any damage was the Inuzuka and the Aburame, though thankfully they were only minor and had been rebuilt and put back to normal within a few weeks. The civilian and shinobi worked away to help rebuild their homes, while large groups of Leaf shinobi went out to complete the day-to-day mission they were given in order to show that the Leaf was still strong and they were not going anywhere. At the Namikaze residence, all was quiet before a baby's cry rang out through the house, alerting those that were inside. The Uzumaki Namikaze family could have had their own clan compound or lived in the Hokage mansion if they wanted, but Minato and Kushina never wanted the big lavish lifestyle. They were more than content with their 6-bedroom house, which has cozy, warm and family feel to it. Plus, with only 5 of them, there was just no need for a big clan compound. Naruto raced from his room and into the nursery, where he already found his mother holding and rocking his sister Mito back to sleep. "Is Mito-chan okay, Ka-chan?" he asked, walking in front of his mother as he saw Mito's wriggling form in his mother's arms. Kushina looked towards her oldest son and smiled. "Yes, she is okay, Naru-chan. She is just being a little fussy. She seems to have a lot of energy like another little someone when he was this age," she said, laughing a little at his big smile he was giving her. Naruto turned towards the crib and as his little brother Eiji still sleeping peacefully. Both babies were very active, he had noticed, though they never seemed to wake up at the same time during the night. He looked at his mother and saw her yawn a little. "Are you okay, Ka-chan? You look sleepy," he asked with a worried look on his face, touching his mother's sleeve. She nodded her head a little and noticed Mito was calming down and her eyes were beginning to drift off again. She delicately placed her back in the crib and saw she stayed quiet. "Don't worry about me, Naru-chan. I'm just feeling a little tired. Having 2 new babies will do that to someone. I will be fine, I promise," she said as Naruto nodded, though the little frown on his face showed he was not all that convinced. Kushina was about to move but saw Naruto holding a book in his hands. "Naru-chan, what do you have there?" she asked, taking the book gently from his hands and crouching down in front of him. Looking at the book she saw it read Chakra for Beginners. She looked at Naruto and saw him shuffling a little. Is my little Naru-chan wanting to become a ninja like his Two-san and Ka-chan? She asked teasingly and saw him nod his head though he was looking down at floor in embarrassment. What brought this on? I want to get strong so I can protect you, he said quietly to himself though Kushina had heard him and was a little surprised by his answer. To protect me, she said in a sweet voice. To protect you and Two-san, Mito-chan and Eiji-chan too, I don't want you to get hurt again, he said sniffling a little but felt his mother's arms wrapping around him. Kushina had a smile on her face as she kissed the top of his head. My brave little Naru-chan, how lucky am I to have you as my baby. My big strong boy, she said leaning back and cupping his face in her hands and kissing the end of his nose making him wrinkle it. Do you think you could help me? He asked with a hopeful look on his face since he knew his mother was a powerful shinobi who was on par with his Ba-chan Tsunade. Kushina bit her lip a little and shook her head a little making Naruto feel a little disappointed. I am sorry Naru-chan but I am too busy to help you at the moment. Plus I have some of the other moms coming over in a little while. I would love to help you but it will have to be another time. But hey, she said giving him a smile. Why don't you ask you Two-san? I'm sure he would like to help you, she said. Naruto thought about it and nodded. I guess I could, he said with a smile. I'm sorry again Naru-chan. It's okay Ka-chan, you're busy so another time, he said making his mother smile as she watched him leave the room. She felt a little disappointed that she could not train him but she really was busy and just did not have the time. She had some of the other new shinobi moms coming over so they could catch up and so she could have them all meet Eiji and Mito. There was her oldest friend and childhood rival Makoto Uchiha who was briding over her youngest son Sasuke. Then there was Sume Inuzuka who was bringing her son Kiba. Then there was Yoshino Nara and Inora Yamanaka who were bringing over their babies Shikamaru and Ino. Shaking her head knowing she could help him another time she continued with her work in preparing the living room for when the other mothers stopped by. Naruto meanwhile went into his father's office at the back of the house and knocked on the door. Come in, he heard from behind the door and opened the door and walked in. Minato was hunched over his desk filling out some paperwork when Naruto walked in. Since the twins' birth he spent some of his time in his office at home instead of the Hokage office just so that if Kushina needed any help with the twins, he could be there to lend a hand. Hey Naru-chan, he said seeing Naruto walk through the door. He scooped Naruto up and put him on his lap getting a small laugh from his son. Is your Ka-chan okay? He asked wanting to know how his wife was managing. She is okay. She is getting ready for some of the others' mommies when they come over. Ah, well then we best stay out of the way. You know what your Ka-chan is like when her girly friends come over, he said as they both laughed. Whenever Kushina and the other moms got together, Kushina and Makoto always ended up arguing whether it was over something as trivial as who has the best cooking to who won the most matches from their past spars. Even where they were pregnant there was a sense of competition from the two that drove both husbands into the crazy house. So is there something you need Naru-chan? Minato asked looking at his son. Naruto nodded and showed him the book. Minato took and looked at the cover and smiled at the title. So you want to start training to become a shinobi? You have already impressed me and the others with those sensor abilities you seem to have. Minato and the others were still a little astonished that Naruto had it since there was no indication of it before which made them think that Naruto was either not aware of it or it only manifested during the attack. Naruto nodded again. I was wondering if you could teach me how to use chakras since I want to get strong. And why do you want to get strong Naru-chan? He asked. So I can protect my family and the village, the little boy in his lap said. Hearing his words Minato smiled a big smile and ruffled Naruto's hair. That's a great reason for wanting to get strong Naru-chan. If you have a goal like that then you will definitely become a strong shinobi one day. You think so? Naruto asked so innocently that if Kushina was there then she would have put him in a tight hug. I know so. Minato responded making Naruto smile. So do you think you could help me train? Two-san he asked hoping that his father would say yes. However his hopes were dashed when he saw him shake his head with an apologetic look on his face. I am sorry Naru-chan but I am too busy right now. I need to get this paperwork done soon and then I have a meeting in half an hour. I don't have the time. Oh, Naruto said, looking sad that his father could not help him either and now wondered who could help him. Maybe another time, huh? I can show you a few cool moves and I am sure your mother would like to show you a thing of two, he said encouragingly, hoping it did not get him down. Okay 2-chan, Naruto said, taking the book back from Minato. He got off his father's lap and went towards the door. 2-chan, is it okay to go down to the park? He asked just as his father was about to get back to work. Minato bit his lip. He did not mind Naruto going to the park, but seeing as Naruto was only 5, he did not want him going out on his own. He had made that mistake a few months ago and it ended with him getting a beating from his livid wife who was worried where her baby was all on his own. Of course he was then almost smothered to death by the hug his mothers gave him when he returned with Sarutobi bringing him back. Well, I guess that would be okay, but I want you back here by 3 o'clock, he said, getting a nod from Naruto. And you only go to the one that is a few minutes away, not the one in the center of the village. He got another nod. Plus you have to have an Anbu follow you. Naruto nodded again before Minato sighed. Alright, go on and have fun. But be careful. I will 2-chan, I promise, he said before he walked out. Minato sighed again before calling out Anbu. When he did, an Anbu male with a lion mask appeared beside him. Follow my son and make sure he does not get into any trouble or gets hurt. Hi Hokage-sama, the Anbu said before he shunshined away and leaving Minato to get back to work. With Naruto. Naruto arrived at the small park and saw it was completely empty with only the wind moving the swing seats. His mother mostly took him here when she could, while his dad did on the occasions when he was not busy. The park was only small, but it was nearby and was a peaceful little spot that he always enjoyed. That was one thing Minato and Kushina had noticed about Naruto when he first started speaking. Naruto had always been quiet and only really spoke if it was worth saying or was important. But when he did, he was very polite, which many liked about him since most his age tended to blurt out whatever came to mind. Walking over and sitting on the seat, he began to swing slowly before he looked at the book in his hand. He had bought this book from a shinobi book shop the other day when Kakashi was taking him round the village. Apparently Kakashi need to collect some kind of book that Naruto was not allowed to see, which made him pout. While that was happening, Naruto was looking at the shinobi section. Though he could not read most of the titles very well, he did pick up the Chakra for Beginners book. He then asked Kakashi if he could get it for him. Kakashi took one look at the book before shrugging and paying for it, much to Naruto's delight. Naruto opened the book and tried to read, but the words were a little too long for him and he could not pronounce a few of the words correctly. He sat there trying to read it for about 10 minutes with squinted eyes before he got a little frustrated and put the book down on the ground beside him. How can I be a good ninja like Ka-chan and 2-san if I can't even read well? He thought as he began to swing. He looked up on the top of a roof where he felt a fairly strong energy reside. Maybe that is the Anbu-san 2-san sent to watch over me, he thought. After another few minutes of silence, he heard a voice called him from behind. Looking behind him, his expression brightened a little when he saw his Ba-chan's apprentice Shizune walking towards him with her usual kind smile on her face and with Tsunade's pet pig Tun-Tun in her arms. Hi Shizune-san, he said politely as the 17-year-old medic Nin took a seat next to him. He had met her a few times when Tsunade visited his family and she always found him adorable and cute. Plus she was always very kind to him. Hello Naru-chan. What did I tell you about calling me san? She said, tapping his nose. You can either call me Shizune-chan or Shizune-chan. Naruto nodded with a small smile on his face. Okay Ne-chan, he said, making her smile. Oink, oink. Naruto giggled a little and petted Tun-Tun. Hi Tun-Tun, he said as the pig nuzzled his leg. Now what are you doing here all by yourself? Is your Ka-chan or 2-san not here? They were busy. Ka-chan has the others' clan mommies over for lunch and 2-san is busy with paperwork. Quote. What about Kakashi or Jiraiya? She asked since she was aware Tsunade was at the hospital making sure the staff did not slack off. Naruto shook his head again. So you are here all by yourself? Shizune asked, not liking that Naruto was here on his own. He shook his head once more. No, the Anbu-san is up on the roof though he feels a little bored, he said, pointing to the roof of the nearby building, which made Shizune look up. The Anbu is up there. How do you know? She asked, looking a little skeptical. I can feel him up there. Oh, that's right, Shizune thought. Lady Tsunade mentioned Naruto had some kind of sensor ability. Though I wonder how strong it is. For one so young to have sensor abilities was quite a feat in itself. It showed her just how strong Naruto might be when he grew older. Plus sensors were always a boost since shinobi that could detect others were very well looked upon and respected by others. Then how come you could not feel me coming towards you? She asked with Naruto struggling his little shoulders. I don't know. I was not really paying attention, he asked pouting a little making Shizune laugh into her sleeve. So do you think you could tell me what I am feeling at the moment? She said wanting to test how good these sensor abilities were. Naruto started as he stared at Shizune. Shizune though had to stop herself from cuddling him since he looked very adorable when he tried to focus. They stayed silent for about a minute before Naruto answered. You feel happy and cheery but a little cheeky as well, he said. When he did, Shizune clapped her hands showing she was impressed. That's very good, Naru-chan. I see your ba-chan's not over-exaggerating when she said you had sensor ability. You could become a very strong ninja just like your parents with that ability. Really? You think I can? To-san, I could be strong because I want to protect my family and the village, he squeaked out. Then your To-san is a very smart man, she said before she grabbed him and began tickling his stomach. No, Ne-chan, stop, it tickles. He cried out making Shizune laugh while Tun-Tun looked like she was trying to link him too by licking his ear. Sitting up as she watched Tun-Tun lick Naruto which made him giggle loudly, she noticed the book to the side and went to pick it up. Chakra for Beginners, she read before smiling and looking at Naruto. Naru-chan, did you come here to try and learn how to be a ninja? She asked as Naruto sat up after Tun-Tun stopped licking him and saw him nod his head. I tried to but I could not read it. There were too many big words and I did not understand it very well, he said looking a little embarrassed though the 17-year-old lifted his head up gently with her index finger. Don't worry, Naru-chan, there is nothing to be embarrassed about. I think it is a good thing that you are trying to learn this, it shows that you understand that to be a ninja you have to start right at the bottom and work your way up. Really? He asked with her nodding. If you like I can go over it with you and teach you how to access your chakra, she said making him get a hopeful look on his face. Really, you would do that? Don't you have other things you need to do today? I already finished my shift at the hospital and it is either help you or get bored sitting at home. And how could I ever not want to help little Naru-chan? She picked Naruto up from his spot and put him in her lap as she leaned against the swing bars. The book was placed in front of them and together they began to read. Chakra is the mixture between spiritual energy and the body's physical energy. It is essential to every jutsu technique that has and ever will be created. Once molded, it can be channeled through the chakra circulatory system, which is to chakra as the regular circulatory system is to blood, to any of the 361 chakra points in the body. Through various methods, the most common of which is hand seals. Hand seals perform many ninjutsu, genjutsu, and other secret arts other than taijutsu. The exact amount of chakra necessary to perform a simple technique is manipulated through hand seals. This will vary between the simplest of jutsus to the most dynamic and most powerful. The hand seals are bird, boar, dog, dragon, ox, tiger, serpent, rat, horse, monkey, hare and ram. The two sat there for about an hour as Shizune read about chakra to Naruto and explained certain parts that he did not quite understand. She also made sure he was aware of what made up chakra and how many chakra points there are in the body, even pointing to the places where certain ones were on her arms. Do you understand, Naruto? She asked him as he sat there on her lap and saw him nod as he looked at one of the pictures that represented physical and spiritual energies coming together to make chakra. Can we try to see if I can use my chakra? He asked since he looked a little eager to begin. Sure, Shizune said warmly as Naruto hopped of her lap and sat in front of her. Get in a meditative pose like I am doing, she said as Naruto watched and tried himself though Shizune had to help him a little since his legs were still so little. You comfortable? She asked and with Naruto nodding his head she began. Okay Naruto-chan, first I want to make this hand sign. This is the ram hand sign. Using any one of the hand signs will help to bring out your chakra and bring it to the surface. The ram hand sign is the one most used when starting out to first draw their chakra. Like this. He asked as did his best to mimic the hand sign Shizune was showing him. She observed and made a little tweak with two of his fingers before he had it right. Now to draw out your chakra you have to dig deep inside and try to draw it out. Search deep down and wait until you feel a warm sensation in your stomach. When you feel it, try to focus in on it and then pull it out to the surface. I will demonstrate. Naruto watched as Shizune closed her eyes, taking a few deep breaths before exhaling. After about 10 seconds Naruto felt a strong burst of energy come from Shizune which caught him a little off guard. He could feel how warm it was and though it was anywhere near as big as his two sands or his ka-chan, but he felt it flowing smoothly from her. If he squinted a little he could just about make out a blue-like aura appearing around her. Was that chakra? He asked her when she stopped and opened her eyes. The blue thing around you. It was. If you manage surge out enough chakra then it can become visible around you and will be a light blue color. Now it is your turn, she asked as he nodded. Though don't be sad if you don't manage to do it, Naru-chan. It takes time to activate your chakra for the first time. Okay, but I will try my best, he said eagerly as Shizune smiled at him and petted Tun-Tun who was beside her. She watched as Naruto closed his eyes and took deep breaths similar to what she did moments ago. The ram hand sign he made was shaking a little, but she knew it was because Naruto was a little nervous since he obviously did want to let her down. Up on the building the Anbu assigned to watch over Naruto also looked in interest, wanting to see if his Hokage's son would be able to activate his chakra for the first time. Though he leaned forward to get a better view, he still remained hidden from view. After a few minutes had passed, Naruto opened his eyes with sad look on his face. I couldn't find it. I did not feel that warm feeling in my tummy. That's okay, Naru-chan, I did say you might not be able to do it the first time around. It takes a few tries to first do it. You just have to keep trying and eventually it will happen. Okay, I guess I can try again, he said as he got back in his meditative pose and made the ram hand sign again. He closed his eyes and took a few more deep breaths. Shizune observed again with Tun-Tun staring at him too. I have to find a pull in my tummy, he thought as he searched around while keeping as calm as he could. After another minute he still could not feel it, so he gritted his teeth a little. I need to unlock my chakra so I can protect Ka-chan, Tu-san, Mito-chan and Eiji-chan. I won't stop until I find it, he thought. Just when he finished he felt a pull in his stomach and felt a warm sensation appear there. Could this be my chakra, he thought before doing as Shizune said, and he did his focus on the warm sensation and to pull to it the surface. When he did it felt like his whole body suddenly became warm and felt his fingers and his toes tingle. Outside Shizune smiled a big smile when she saw a tiny blue aura appear around Naruto. She was about to go forward and hug him. Well done for activating his chakra for the first time, but was a little caught off guard when she felt the size of his chakra. His chakra, it's already about the size of fresh genin already. Is this because he is an Uzumaki? I know Kushina-sama had large chakra reservoirs when she was young, but I don't even she had this much when she first activated it. Though she also felt how untamed it felt. Once Naruto got used to activating his chakra, someone would most likely have to show him one of the basic chakra control exercises. Up on the building the Anbu was all a little surprised, though his mask hid that surprise. Though he was not all that surprised considering whom his parents were. Shizune shook Naruto a little, which made him lose focus and the chakra he was emitting stopped. He opened his eyes to see Shizune and Tun-Tun looking at him with joyful looks on their face, which made him smile a big smile. I did it, he said, jumping up. Though when he did he suddenly felt tired and his body go a little stiff and fall to the ground. However, Shizune was in front of him and caught him in a warm embrace. The Anbu on the build was about to move when he saw Naruto's fall, but saw Shizune had it well covered. Why do I feel sleepy? He asked as he yawned in Shizune's arms. Silly Naru-chan, you pushed out a lot of chakra when you activated it, which has now left you feeling tired. Don't worry, after some rest and some food in your tummy you will be fine, she said as Tun-Tun nuzzled into his leg. I think this is enough for the day. Let's get you home, she said as picked up the book under arms while carrying Naruto in her left. They left the park as did the Anbu and quietly watched over them as they made their way back home. Halfway there Naruto spoke up. Hey, Nei-chan. Yes, Naru-chan, she asked looking down at him. What kind of a ninja are you? He asked, surprising her a little, though she answered. Well, I am a medic nin. I practice medical ninjutsu, which is why I work mainly at the hospital. Medical ninjutsu. What's that? He asked, making Shizune giggle a little at how he said medical. Medical ninjutsu is a type of ninjutsu that is used to heal people when they get hurt. Like when people are sick and not feeling good. Exactly, I am okay at fighting, but I prefer healing people, which is why I am Lady Tsunade's apprentice. She is the best medic nin in the whole world. Wow, he said quietly to himself. Ba-chan is really strong. She is. She is one of the strongest in the village and is known all over the world as one of the strongest kunoichi there has ever been. So does that mean you are really powerful too? He asked, making her laugh again. I am nowhere near as powerful as your Ba-chan, but I like to think that I am capable of looking after myself. I am a Chunin level ninja, so I know how to defend myself, which is the main thing. Naruto just nodded and felt his eyes begin to get heavy. They appeared in front of his home and walked inside. He could hear female voices coming from the living room and recognized one as Kushina's. As Shizune walked towards the stairs, she passed the living room where Kushina and the others' moms were. She was sat beside Makoto Uchiha and Inora Yamanaka, while on another seat was Yoshino Nara and Tsu Minazuka. All the mothers were holding little wrapped bundles in their arms, while the twins were in a little crib just in front of Kushina. The mothers all looked up to see Shizune in the doorway holding Naruto in her arms, looking like he will fall asleep at any moment. Hello Shizune, Kushina said, standing up as the others' mom all said hello to the teenage girl. She looked at Naruto and saw him giving her a wave hello. Did you have fun today, Naru-chan? She asked and saw him tiredly nod. He has been great today. He unlocked his chakra for the first time. Shizune said, surprising the women in the room before they all smiled and told him well done. Thank you, he said, almost half mumbling and not really paying much attention, making the moms coo at him. Kushina went up to him and kissed him softly on the forehead while he nuzzled into Shizune. My little Naru-chan, already beginning his path to becoming a shinobi, I know your two-san will be proud when he gets home. Little Naru-chan has gotten big since I last saw him, Makoto said as she appeared next to Kushina and gave Naruto a small wave. He is the same size as my little Itachi. They saw Naruto yawn and Kushina asked if Shizune could put Naruto to bed for her, which the Shizune quickly said yes to. Walking up the stairs and entering his room, she saw how neat and tidy it was and put him down onto his bed with blue covers with little shuriken on the front. She placed his book on the small desk beside the bed and quietly left the room, leaving the door unlocked a little. Thank you for helping him today, Shizune, Kushina said while Shizune just waved it off. I was happy to help him. I love spending time with little Naru-chan. In that case, might I ask you a favor? Kushina asked as Shizune nodded. With the twins, I might not have much time for Naruto, and the same can be said with Minato, with him helping rebuild the village. I was wondering, would it be possible for you to help Naru-chan with his chakra? Shizune was a little taken by surprise by the request, but she could see where Kushina was coming from in a way. With two newborn babies, her focus would without a doubt have to be on them, which would have left little time for Naruto. Plus Minato with his responsibilities as Hokage and the state the village was currently in meant the same thing towards Naruto. Of course Kushina-sama, I would love to help Naru-chan. Thank you Shizune, Kushina said before the two said their goodbyes, and she walked back into the living room to continue her conversation with the others' mothers while Shizune left the house. Chapter 3. The art is in our blood. How is the exercise coming along, Naru-chan? Shizune asked from her seat besides the young blonde as she read a book on medical ninjutsu as well as watched Naruto, who had 5 leaves in his hand. Currently the young blonde was trying to balance the leaves on the end of his fingers by only using his chakra. Shizune had told him that it was an exercise that was used to help learn to control one's chakra. It's coming along okay, Ne-chan. I think I almost got it, he said from his seat on the ground as he shakily balanced the 5 leaves on the tip of his fingers. Shizune leaned in to take a good look, and a small look on her face that showed she was impressed. She couldn't help but feel a little amazed that despite how young he was and how big his chakra was at his age, Naruto had surprisingly good chakra control and learned at a very quick pace. He was eager to learn and loved anything that was ninja related. Plus he was always full of questions, which Shizune knew to be a good quality, since the best way to learn was to ask question and ask for help, which Naruto had no problem in doing. She had been teaching Naruto for almost a year and had mainly taught him bits of history on the leaf along with its clans, taught him more about chakra and over the last month beginning on his control since Naruto now had a decent understanding of it for a 6-year-old. That's very good Naru-chan. Your control is very good. Your parents would be very proud, she said. I guess, he said with a half smile that was not full of the usual cheeriness that he usually carried. One that Shizune had recognized. She had an idea of what had him so down. She had noticed that over the last few months Kushina and Minato had made very little time for Naruto and had spent almost all their time with the twins. The twins both looked almost identical, though they could tell them apart by the deep-looking whiskers marks on Mito's cheeks. The twins had celebrated their 1-year birthday a few weeks ago and the mother and father had made a big deal of it, wanting their first birthday to be something to remember. Only a week before that it had been Naruto's birthday, which was a quiet affair. He got presents and cake of course as he saw Hiruzen, Tsunade and even Jiraiya and Kakashi, who were always away on missions. Though Shizune had noticed that despite it being Naruto's birthday, Kushina and Minato had spent most of it focusing on Mito and Eiji, which Shizune had to admit, she was not all that impressed. She understood the twins needed more looking after than Naruto did to their age, but she did not like that Naruto was getting a little left out. Let's take a break, Naru-chan. You have done very well today. I think you have earned yourself a little treat for today. Naruto's face seemed to brighten at the word treat and let the leaves drops from his fingers tip and float to the ground. We will take this stuff home first and then how about we get some ice cream since it is quite warm today. Does that sound good? She asked as Naruto quickly nodded his head in agreement. She took his hand in hers and together walked towards Naruto's house. They talked a little as they made their way to Naruto's home, with Naruto once again asking questions about Shizune being a medic nin. Ever since she told him about her being a medic nin, he had asked many questions over the year about why she wanted to be a medic nin and what kind of abilities they have. She thought maybe Naruto was interested in taking up medical ninjutsu, which she would be a little surprised about but would also love if he would. He had shown Binti 6 that his control was pretty good and if focused, could one of the best at controlling chakra. Though a medic nin was not what she pictured Naruto as, despite liking the thought of him being one. But it did not hurt to maybe show him some medical ninjutsu in the future. I want to make sure little Naru-chan is prepared for the life of a shinobi as best as I can. Some of the civilians and shinobi they passed gave a small wave to the two and greeted them warmly, since the village had all but loved Naruto the moment he was brought into the world. As they approached the Uzumaki Namikaze home, they saw Kushina just exiting the door with the twins strapped into a stroller. Eiji was fast asleep while Mito had a dummy in her mouth. "Hi Ka-chan," Naruto called with a bright look on his face and walked up to his mother, making Kushina look in his direction and giving him a smile. "Hello Naru-chan. How was our study session, Shizune?" she asked as she checked the stroller had everything she needed and that the twins were safely strapped in. "It's going great. I can balance 5 leaves on my fingers now." "That's great Naru-chan," she asked, not looking up from the stroller. "So where are you going?" he asked with a little frown on his face. "I'm taking the twins for a walk around the market and then we are visiting your father at the office," she said as she patted his head and giving him a small smile. "Maybe I can," he started, but saw Kushina had already begun to walk away, said goodbye to them both and left the house. "Go with you," he finished, looking at the ground sighing a little. Shizune meanwhile had a frown on her face. It was like she had thought before. Kushina, although giving Naruto her attention at first, it quickly shifted back to the twins. "You okay Naru-chan?" she asked in slight worry. I'm fine Ne-chan. Ka-chan is just busy again and I understand," he said with a half smile again and quickly went inside to put away his equipment before quickly returning. Shaking her head and getting rid of the frown on her face, she took Naruto's hand into hers again and the two walked into the center of the village to get some ice cream. 20 minutes later the two walked out of the ice cream shop with Shizune licking a mint chocolate chip ice cone while Naruto had orange flavor. He was devouring it rather quickly. "Slow down Naru-chan or you will give yourself brain freeze," she chided a little. Thought tried not to laugh when she saw Naruto had got ice cream on the tip of his nose. With the end of her sleeve she wiped it off his nose, but then found that he had now got orange ice cream around his cheeks as well, as was smiling a big goofy smile at her. You are so messy at eating ice cream, Naru-chan, she said, now wiping the rest of his face while tickling him a little. No, Nei-chan, or I will drop my ice cream, he said, which thankfully made her stop. The two walked for a few minutes before they sat on a small bench and just enjoyed the sun and watched as the people went past on by. After a few minutes though, Shizune tapped Naruto's shoulder, which got his attention. Naru-chan, tell me what Genma is feeling at the moment, she said, pointing to a Chunin shinobi who had a senbon in his mouth and a bandana around his head that was the other way around. He hummed as he focused on the Chunin as he walked past before he spoke. He feels a little bored but a little lazy at the same time, like he does not know what to do. Sounds like Genma, she thought before she pointed over towards an Inuzuka clan member with their ninja hounds walking beside them. He feels happy and excited and maybe a little bit too cocky as well. Naruto added while Shizune nodded, believing that completely, considering Inuzuka males tended to be a little too overconfident most times. Though what they were doing might be seen as a little rude to some people, Shizune had found it to be a great way for Naruto to get used to his sensor abilities. Plus, by feeling the energies of people around them, it helped him get familiar with those that lived in the village. That way when he was older it would help him know who was a resident of Konoha and who was not, and whether they had good or ill intention towards their home. That's very good, Naru-chan. You are getting better with those sensor abilities of yours, she said, making him smile. Though when he did, he felt a familiar signature walking up to them from behind them, and it felt quite strong. He looked behind them, which also prompted Shizune to do the same, but grinned when he saw who it was. Hey Asuma-san, he said, giving the young Jonin a wave while licking his ice cream. Hey Naruto, hey Shizune, he said, giving her a nod as well as he took a drag on his cigarette. Hello Asuma-san, just getting back from a mission? She asked, since he looked a little tired. He nodded his head. Yeah, just a few minutes ago actually. Guy is giving the mission report to the Hokage. Shizune nodded, though felt a little bad for Asuma. Though she liked Guy and he was good friend, the man was a little full on and could be a little much. Asuma-san, you know you should not smoke. Nei-chan says it bad for your health. Naruto chided softly, making Asuma raise an eyebrow while Shizune giggled a little into her hand. True, but I summon a bit of chakra round my lungs so that it does not do as much damage. Plus I am as healthy as a horse. Yeah, but Nei-chan says if a horse has to be put down when it breaks its legs. Does that mean you will have to put down when they make your lungs go bad? He asked with complete innocence in his voice. Asuma looked at Naruto in slight disbelief while Shizune was just laughing her eyes out. You have to admit, Asuma, he has got you there, she said, trying to regain control over herself. Asuma mumbled something under his breath before shaking his head and to try and get himself out of this embarrassing situation at being outwitted by a 6-year-old. Anyway, I am about to head home and back to the Sarutobi Manor. If you two are done with your session today, why don't you come along? My pops should be there and I am sure he would like to see Naruto, he recommended. Naruto looked happy at the prospect getting to see his Gigi and looked at Shizune with a pleading look. Can we, Nei-chan, please? He asked, giving her a puppy dog-like look. It made her want to hug him to death, though she managed to keep her calm. Sure Naruto, I don't see why not. Plus who knows, maybe your Gigi will have some shinobi wisdom to give you, she said, making Naruto smile even more. If there is anything my dad has, it's wisdom by the shed loads. Asuma said before he began making his way back home, with Shizune and Naruto now following behind him. As they walked to the Sarutobi Manor, Asuma spoke about the mission he had, which was to take out a bandit encampment that had been established 2 days outside of the village that was terrorizing a nearby village. Naruto tried to listen, though the two older teens were making sure Naruto did not hear any of the gory parts since he was still a kid and they did not want to expose him to the killing part of a shinobi duty until he was a bit older. They arrived at a large manor house about 3 stories high and very wide that had fresh flower beds decorating the outside. They walked in and took their sandals off before Asuma called out, "Yo, Dad, I'm back and we got guests." "I'm in the dining room." They heard, recognizing it as Sarutobi's voice, and began to walk towards it. As they walked further into the home and arrived in the dining room, they saw Sarutobi sitting at the low table, sitting on a cushion with some ink, brushes and paper lay out in front of him, and was writing elegant-looking giant kanjis on them. "Gigi," Naruto called, barreling towards Sarutobi. The former Hokage took notice of Naruto and smiled a grandfatherly smile at the young blonde. Naruto-kun, this is a nice surprise, he asked as hugged the blonde and settled him on the cushion that was stationed beside him. And Shizune-chan, it's nice to see you again. Hello Sarutobi-sama, she said, bowing a little before taking up a seat beside Naruto. How did the mission go, Asuma? Sarutobi asked as he looked at his son standing in the doorway as he finished of the smoke in his mouth. It went well, but I am feeling a little tired, so I'm going to head to bed to get some rest, he said as Hiruzen nodded to his son and watched him go before he turned to Naruto. So Naruto-kun, it's nice to have you over today. If I had known I would have had some tea and sweets ready, he said. That's okay Gigi. Nate-chan said I did good today in my studies, so we went to get ice cream. And how are your studies going? I'm sure your parents are very pleased to see you on your way to becoming a great shinobi. Naruto half smiled again like he did earlier, though Hiruzen had noticed the small flash of sadness appear in his eyes that worries him a little. He looked at Shizune, who just gave him a look that said, "Tell you later." Nate-chan taught me the leaf balancing exercise for my chakra control. I can already balance 5 leaves on one hand now, he said, feeling proud of himself. Well, that's very good Naruto-kun. You are well on your way to becoming a great shinobi. Everybody starts at the bottom, and I am glad that you know that and are not trying anything that is currently out of your reach. You want to see? He asked as Hiruzen nodded his head indicating he would. Naruto jumped up from his seat and opened one of the doors to the giant garden and training ground behind the manor house. As he went out the door, Sarutobi looked towards Shizune, who sighed a little. You saw it too, didn't you? She asked a little sadly. Why did he look a little sad when I mentioned Kushina and Minato? Everything is okay at home, is it not? He asked. Everything is fine from what I can see, but I think Naruto is having a hard time due to the twins, she said. Sarutobi asked her to elaborate with what she meant. I can't help but notice that over the last couple of months Kushina-sama and Minato-sama's attention had been fixed mainly on the twins lately, and they seem to be spending most of their free time with them. I think Naruto has been feeling a little left out due to the lack of attention they have been giving him lately. Also, when he asks them to help him with his session or just to play a little they are normally busy. Well, something like this was always going to happen, Hiruzen suggested. After all, with the twins being so young, it is only natural that their attention to be focused more on them. Oh, I know, and I am probably just looking into it too much, but at Naruto's birthday a few weeks ago, I noticed that their attention was again mainly focused on the twins and not on Naruto. Don't you think that is a little odd? She said as Hiruzen sighed a little. I understand what you mean, Shizune, but unfortunately sometimes these things are to be expected with having more than one child. Plus, since Mito is a jinchūriki, there is always that small chance that something may happen with the seal. They are probably just being cautious. Shizune was the one to sigh a little now. Yeah, I guess you were right, I am sure it is just temporary, she said, shaking her head. Just as she was about to speak, Naruto came back in, halting their conversation. Though she was a little surprised when she saw Tsunade walk in form behind Naruto. Lady Tsunade, what are you doing here? She asked as Hiruzen greeted his old student. I thought I would visit sensei while I had some time away from the hospital. It's an added bonus that I get to see little Naru-chan. I have not seen him since his birthday, she said, hugging Naruto from behind and making Naruto smile up at her. They all sat around the table as they watched Naruto show them he could do the leaf exercise. When he succeeded, Sarutobi and Tsunade clapped while Shizune patted him on the back. As Shizune moved over to speak with Tsunade, Naruto focused on the stuff on the table. Gigi, what are all the scribbles and kanjis for? Naruto asked as he looked at the equipment on the table and the paper with the kanji written on them. He looked a little interested in them. Ah, well, this is my calligraphy equipment, Naruto-kun. It helps with keeping my writing abilities neat and readable. Plus, it is a practice that is great for practicing to write fuinjutsu seals, he explained as he took a brush with a bit on ink on the end and made the kanji for fire on one of the pieces of paper. Naruto watched in interest. Fuinjutsu, he said aloud with a thinking-like pose on his face. Is that the one where you make things go poof and put them in another object? He asked Sarutobi as Shizune giggled into her sleeve at his description. Sarutobi chuckled a little as well and ruffled his hair. Yes, that is one way to describe it, Naruto-kun. It's also a type of shinobi practice your two-san and ka-chan are masters as. When it comes to fuinjutsu, your parents are the best there is. Really? He asked with slightly wide eyes as Hiruzen nodded. Are you good at fuinjutsu too, Gigi? Sarutobi tapped his chin as he thought it over. Well, I am not bad, I guess. Do you know how the art of sealing works, Naru-chan? He asked but saw Naruto shake his head. So Sarutobi explained while Shizune listened in on the description. Well, fuinjutsu is a type of jutsu that seal objects, living beings, chakra, along with a wide variety of other things within another object. Fuinjutsu can also be used to unseal objects either from within something or someone. That you are already aware of, he said as Naruto nodded, prompting him to continue. Well, with fuinjutsu there are 10 levels on sealing, with level 1 being for beginners and then level 10 being for masters. Your ka-chan and two-san are both level 10 fuinjutsu masters and are most likely the only level 10 fuinjutsu masters in the world. Jiraiya meanwhile is a level 8, Tsunade 7, while Kakashi is a level 6. Whoa, that's so cool, Naruto said, getting a nod from Sarutobi. So then what level are you at? It must be pretty high because you're so strong. Ah well, while I am not as good at sealing like your parents or Jiraiya, I do know my way around seals and I can spot a great seal when I see one. My fuinjutsu skills are a level 7 like your ba-chan. Cool, he said as he looked at the equipment before turning back to Sarutobi. Could you teach me, Gigi? He asked, surprising the former Hokage before he smiled and nodded at the request. I can, however. Before you learn about sealing you need to have a steady hand and be able to write and draw neatly and elegantly. That way the seal will be able to work. I can teach you calligraphy first as a first step, he said with Naruto nodding. Putting a few large sheets of paper in front of Naruto and giving him a brush and small palette of ink, he guided Naruto with what to do. Though he knew Naruto had good handwriting for someone his age, he knew it was better to practice and get the symbols spot on, since one wrong marking could lead to a disaster. Okay Naruto-kun, first we will start easy and will draw the kanji for fire that I did moments ago. I will go slowly so you can follow the movement, he said as Naruto nodded and tipped his brush into one of the ink palettes. Naruto watched as Sarutobi's brush glided along the paper and Naruto slowly and carefully did his best to follow the movements. From the side, Shizune and Tsunade were watching with interest since they were wondering when Naruto would gain an interest in seals. Considering his Uzumaki blood and who his parents are, it was almost required for Naruto to have a strong interest in the art of sealing. Naruto's tongue poked out of his mouth, showing how hard he was concentrating, and made licked his lips a little. After Hiruzen finished the symbol he placed his brush down and looked at Naruto's, who was just finished the last part, until he made the last little swish movement with his brush. Like Sarutobi, he placed his brush down. Hiruzen looked it over and narrowed his eyes as he looked it over, checking for any little mistakes. Then a couple of seconds later he smiled. This is very good for a first try, Naruto-kun, he said, placing the paper back down on the table, making Naruto smile at the praise. Though next time try and make the bottom right leg of the kanji a little longer, since the one on this is a little short. Naruto nodded seriously before he attempted it again. The two worked on calligraphy for a few hours as Hiruzen taught Naruto to draw all the element symbols, as well had him write sentences as quickly as he could whilst trying to keep the writing and symbols as neat and elegant looking as possible. Hiruzen had to admit that Naruto was doing very well for his first real go at calligraphy. The first time he drew a new symbol there was only small things that needed to be tweaking. From then on all of them looked very professional looking and Hiruzen could not spot a flaw in them. The Uzumaki blood runs strong in you, Naruto-kun, he thought as he went on to show him the symbol for iron. The little guy is doing well, Tsunade said to Shizune as they quietly spoke and watched Naruto work with Hiruzen, and found it very cute as how determined he looked. You know, Naru-chan has been asking me a lot of questions about medic nins lately, she said, making Tsunade's eyebrows rise up in surprise. Really? I did not think medic nins were something little Naru-chan would be interested in. Tsunade said honestly, since not many children really knew about medic nins. You would be surprised. He is very curious about all the different types of shinobi there are and as always asks me about the things I do as a medic nin. So you think he could be a medic nin one day? No, I don't think Naruto would be a medic nin, however, I do think he would be interested to learn some medical ninjutsu. You think he could? Tsunade asked since she was not fully aware of what Naruto could do or what he was good at since she was busy a lot of the time at the hospital. He is very smart for his age and he always asks questions, which is a good thing. Plus for the amount of chakra he has for his age and having pretty good control over it, which he demonstrated earlier, I think Naruto learning some medical ninjutsu could be possible for him and be a big help to him. Tsunade tapped her fingers against her chin as she thought it over. She did enjoy showing people how great medical ninjutsu was since it was an art that many took for granted. It was medical ninjutsu that helped her create her creation rebirth technique and to discover the superhuman strength she was known for. And I would like to teach Naru-chan. Since Kushina and Minato are his parents, he will without a doubt go on to do great things, and if I could help prepare for the life of a shinobi like Shizune already is, it would give Naru-chan a great start. I will think it over. Perhaps teaching Naru-chan a little medical ninjutsu would not be a bad thing, she said with Shizune smiling. Later on at Uzumaki Namikaze home. Naruto sat on the floor in the living room as he sat in front of the coffee table. A little time after his working on calligraphy with his Jiji, Sarutobi had taken Naruto out and got him a little calligraphy set of his own so that he could practice at home. Since Sarutobi told him to make sure he could draw the kanji on the paper as if it was second nature and at a quick speed, that was what he decided to do with the rest of his time for the day. Nah, he heard from beside him and smiled when he noticed Mito was crawling towards him. She and Eiji had spoken their first word a few days after hers and Eiji's first birthday, which happened to be Tusan. It of course made Minato extremely happy since Naruto's first word was Ka-chan. Hi Mito-chan, he said as his little sister continued towards him before rolling around beside him. Did you have a nice dinner? He asked since he saw a little bit of mushy carrots and beans on her face. Picking up a napkin, he put his baby sister in his lap and wiped off the mess from her face, which made her flay her arms around, indicating she did not like it. When he was done, he saw she was staring at what he was doing on the coffee table and was pointing towards one of the brushes he was using. You want to go? He said down at Mito, who just gave a delighted squeals as a response just as Minato walked in with Eiji in his arms and Kushina following behind. So that's where you went, Mito-chan? Went to see what your big brother was doing. Minato said as he saw his daughter on his eldest's lap and he put a brush in her right hand. Together Naruto dipped the brush in the ink and with Mito's in his own, together they slowly drew the kanji for water on the paper. Mito showed she was enjoying it by giggling while Eiji, who was still in Minato's arm, had his arms stretched out showing he wanted to go too. Kushina and Minato sat on the sofas behind the coffee table and watched Naruto and Mito interact with each other before noticing the calligraphy kit. Naru-chan, where did you get this kit? Minato asked. Naruto smiled back at Minato. Jiji got it for me. We went to see Jiji today and he taught me calligraphy. He said it was good for practice for seals. He is right, they are very important for someone who wants to learn seals. Does this mean you are wanting to learn fuinjutsu? Kushina asked, watching as Naruto had let go of Mito's hand as she was just drawing squiggles on the paper. Naruto nodded his head and saw the two equally proud smiles appear on their faces. He watched as his father got from his seat and go upstairs, but quickly returned a minute later with a book in his hand. Here Naru-chan, if you want to learn seals then take this and have Shizune or your Jiji read it with you. This is a beginner's guide to fuinjutsu that I wrote with Jiraiya. This will help you learn the basics and level 1 fuinjutsu. Did your Jiji tell you about the 10 levels? He asked as Naruto nodded. If you are anything like us Naruto then you will fall in love with fuinjutsu. Most think it is a dead-end area of ninjutsu, but it can be very powerful and so helpful if used right. Kushina added while watching Mito have fun with her drawing squiggles. Thank you to-san, Ka-chan, but can't you help me with learning sealing? Jiji and Shizune-chan said you both are the best with seals. He asked, thinking his parents would say yes to this. But to his disappointment both his parents shook their heads. Sorry Naru-chan, we just don't have the time to help you right now, maybe some other time. Kushina answered. But your Jiji can help you since I know he is quite well versed in seals. He will definitely be able to help you. Minato said as he patted Naruto's head. Oh, that's okay. Maybe another time. He said to sound convincing despite feeling sad that they said no. Thank you Naru-chan, thank you for understanding, he said as Kushina picked Mito up, which got a disappointed gurgle from the girl since she was enjoying her squiggle time. Kushina kissed Naruto's forehead before standing up. "Come on Miss Messy, let's get you nice and clean with a bath," she said as she and Minato left the room and headed upstairs with a twin in each arm. As the two left, neither heard the slight sniffle come from Naruto as he started a new page and began to draw again. Chapter 4. The Meeting of Two Geniuses. Naruto jumped over a log as he ran around in a small forest just a little ways away from the Sarutobi Manor as he did his best to jump and dodge out of any obstacles he ran into. He huffed a little as he stopped and tried to catch his breath. He had been running full out for about 30 minutes, which for a 7-year-old most would find impressive. Though he wondered if that was due to his Uzumaki blood, but he would think on that another time. Strapped to the side of his pants was a small pouch that carried some kunai and shuriken which Sarutobi had bought for him a few months. Since he started studying under Sarutobi just over a year ago, Sarutobi, Shizune and Tsunade had been surprised at how quick he was learning what they were showing him. After just 3 months of learning calligraphy from Hiruzen, the boy's handwriting had become so neat most would have thought an adult had written it. So Hiruzen began teaching him level 1 Fuinjutsu, which of course Naruto took to like a sponge. Anything that was seal related went right into his head and stayed there. Sarutobi had been a little flabbergasted at how quickly Naruto had come into Fuinjutsu. He believed that he was quicker in understanding seals at his age than even his parents. The level 1 sealing showed Naruto how to make simple seals like storage seals with scrolls, which were the basic among the Fuinjutsu. It only took Naruto about 5 months to understand the concept of level 1 and how to make high quality and working storage seals. It was also a big surprise when by his 7th birthday he was already beginning level 2 Fuinjutsu. Sarutobi had tested Naruto how quickly he could make a storage seal with the equipment in front of them. He was left flabbergasted again of course when Naruto made one in under 30 seconds. His parents were delighted at how quickly he took to them and knew that one day he would be a future Fuinjutsu master. Meanwhile his studies with Shizune had carried on to the point where even his Ba-chan Suan would turn up on occasions to see how well he was doing and would give him little tips with certain areas of his studies. Once he got the leaf exercise down, they moved on to balancing rocks on the end of his fingers since rocks were heavier and needed more chakra to balance them on the end of his fingers. Once again everyone was surprised at how quickly he was completing the exercise, which showed Tsunade that Shizune had been correct about his chakra control and that she would definitely have to look into teaching him some medical ninjutsu at some point in the future. Even Asuma and Kurenai, who would watch him practice, were amazed at how well he was doing for one so young and knew that he had definitely inherited the brains of his father and the determination of his mother. Gigi told me to stretches as well to make sure my body stays nimble and doesn't seize up, he thought as he began to slow down and stopped in his tracks. He did a few arm stretches and leg lunges since he had taken his Gigi's words to heart about taking care of his body and that he would not get far without keeping a healthy diet and keeping one's body in top shape. Looking at a high tree, he decided he wanted to begin practicing his kunai and shuriken throwing since that was almost a necessary skill one needed to be a shinobi. However, before he could go to begin target practice, he began to sense somebody close by to where he was. It felt a little familiar and decided to go and investigate who the signature was coming from. The signature felt young like him, though he could sense it was quite strong. He trekked through the forest for about 5 minutes until he found who he was looking for. In a small clearing in the forest there stood a boy who looked about the same age as he did, wearing a light blue top and gray pants with shinobi sandals. He had raven hair and had a small beginning of a ponytail at the back. Though the most notable feature was the long, pronounced tear troughs under his eyes. On the back of his shirt was a red and white symbol of a fan. An Uchiha, Naruto thought as he watched what the boy was about to do. He watched as 4 kunai appeared in his hands and then jumped in the air and flipped. As he began coming down, he released the kunai from his hands and flew towards a bunch of targets that were scattered around the small clearing. Naruto's eyes shot wide open when he noticed that they all hit the targets right in the center. Whoa, he is really good. As the young Uchiha landed gently on his feet, he turned over to where Naruto was watching. "Who is there? Come on out," he said lightly but with a slightly threatening tone to it. Naruto stepped out of his hiding spot and walking into view of the Uchiha boy. "My apologies, Uchiha-san," he said, bowing a little. I did not mean to spy. I was in the area and I felt your chakra and came to investigate. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. It is nice to meet you, he said, introducing himself. It is nice to meet you too, Namikaze-san. My name is Itachi Uchiha, he said, reciprocating the bow. Naruto nodded and smiled. How did you get all the kunai on the bull's eye? I am surprised someone my age was able to do such a thing. My two-san and my clan taught me from a very young age, though a lot of it is self-study and a lot of practicing. I just taught myself until I could do it without blinking. So you have been learning to be a ninja since you were young then? When I was 4 I began. Though my ka-san was not happy about it, but my two-san talked her into it, saying we Uchiha had to learn at a young age. Naruto nodded a little as Itachi collect his kunai form the targets. While he was doing so, the young boy also noticed Naruto's ninja pouch strapped to his side. You are training to be a ninja too? He asked with a hint of curiosity in his voice and watched as Naruto rapidly nodded his head. Yeah, I have been training since I was 5, but maybe not as much as you have though. Itachi nodded his head and put his kunais back into his small pouch, which like Naruto was on the side his pants. What sort of stuff have you learnt so far? Naruto asked, since he wanted to compare himself to someone else his age. I have studied and practiced the Uchiha style of taijutsu, shuriken jutsu, and fire jutsu. As well as a little bit of genjutsu, Itachi answered, telling Naruto what he had learnt so far as well, hoping to learn what Naruto has learnt as well. Whoa, he has learnt that much already, Naruto thought, but then again he had been taught that the Uchiha were not only one of the founding families of Konoha but also one of the most powerful, with their family's strength being comparable to the Senju clan. May I ask what you have learned since I have told you mine? Itachi asked as the 7-year-old walked back into the center of the clearing. Sure, Naruto answered happily. I have learned 2 chakra control exercises, the leaf and the rock balancing exercises, while I also practice fuinjutsu. Also my parents tell me I have a sensor ability. Itachi nodded but was a little intrigued by the sensor ability he mentioned. What is your sensor ability? He asked. Naruto shrugged, though. I am not too sure. My Nei-chan and Jiji tell me I can just feel people's chakra as well as what they are feeling, like if they are happy or if they are sad or angry. That sounds like a beneficial ability to have. Though who is your Nei-chan? I was unaware that the Hokage and his wife had an older daughter. She is not really by Nei-chan, but I just call her Nei-chan since she is like one and she thinks of me as her little Autoto. Ah, my apologies for the mistake, he said while Naruto waved it off. Naruto took a good look at Itachi and narrowed his eyes at him. You look familiar. Have we met before this? Itachi shook his head. Perhaps when we were babies, but not since then due to our mother's friendship rivalry. My mother is Makoto Uchiha, he said as Naruto looked in surprise. Makoto Obasan. So that why you look familiar. I think I remember her saying your name before. And you have a little brother, right? Itachi nodded. My younger brother Sasuke, he is the same age as your siblings Mito and Eiji, I believe. The two took a seat in the small clearing and slowly began to talk to each other. They both asked each other what they did for hobbies, which was not surprising to each other when they both answered with training. Though they both found out quickly that the other had a very strong desire to protect their family and village, especially when it came to their siblings and mothers. Since both were the same age, they would both be going to the academy together at the same time. Normally they would have enrolled at 6, but one of the first things Minato did when he became Hokage was increase the age bar for when a child could become a shinobi, since they were not in a time of war and he wanted the children of the village to have more of a childhood before they were entwined with the working of the shinobi world. With Naruto, it was of course known to all how much he adored his mother since before the twins were born, he was the apple of her eye. While Itachi felt a strong connection to his mother due to her being one of the few that wanted Itachi to have something of a normal childhood and would heal his injuries if he ever overworked himself. Itachi described that his father Fugaku Uchiha was a very militarized man who above all else respected power. Since Itachi had shown at young age such promise in the ninja arts, he made sure that Itachi would one day become the best in the village, though Itachi always felt it was just so he could bring more power to their clan. Naruto meanwhile described how after the Kyuubi he felt so useless when he found out his other was hurt and dedicated himself to getting stronger so that he could protect her, his two-san and his siblings from any further hurt. Though Itachi was surprised when Naruto told him it was the third Hokage that was teaching him to how be a shinobi and that he was the one who was teaching him fuinjutsu. Though he knew that the Hokage and his wife were seen as the best with fuinjutsu. It made him wonder why they were not teaching it. When he asked, he noticed his new friend had avoided the subject and moved on to another topic. Also, when Naruto asked whether he could really do Nei elemental ninjutsu since he heard it was very difficult for someone of their age to perform such as feat, he watched with slightly widened eyes when Itachi performed the fire-style fireball jutsu which engulfed the area in a large fireball. The two boys sat there for what felt like a couple of hours until the sun slowly began to come down and both knew they had better get home before their families got worried. Saying goodbye and saying they would try and meet up again the next day, the two new friends made their way home. At that time no one would realize that at that moment, two of Konoha's future greatest legends had just met for the first time. Uchiha clan compound. Itachi walked into the clan compound and slipped his sandals off before making his way into the kitchen. Arrive inside, he saw his mother sitting around the table with Sasuke strapped into his high chair while she tried to feed him his mushy peas, though he looked like he did not want any if the tiny glare on his face any indication. "No," he said, making Makoto sigh before smiling and looking towards her eldest. "Hello Itachi. How was your day?" she asked as little Sasuke spotted his big brother and gurgled happily at him. "It was fine, Ka-san. I just practiced my shuriken jutsu today," he said as sat on the other side of the table as noticed Sasuke was trying to get his attention. "Hello Sasuke, are you being a good boy for Ka-san?" he asked softly as Makoto watched the two interact. "You I good," Sasuke gurgled out, making Itachi smile a small smile while Makoto laughed at her youngest son. "Now why do I get the nose while your big brother gets the smile?" she asked Sasuke, who just swung his arms around in response. "Come on Sasuke, be good for Ka-san, otherwise you will have to eat the mushy apricots," he said and internally smirked as the 2-year-old boy had a look of disgust appear on his face indicating he did not want the apricots. Makoto tried again and moved the spoon towards Sasuke's mouth, and unlike this time he took a big bite out of the food and chewed on it with a yummy expression on her face. As she fed her youngest, Itachi looked around, saw that once again his father Fugaku was nowhere around. "Where is Two-san Ka-san?" he asked, wondering where his father was. Makoto sighed. "Your Two-san is at the Uchiha police force station along with Yashira. Apparently they will be pulling an all-nighter again," she said as she did wish that her husband would spend more time at home. But then again, when he is home all he does is focus on Itachi, she thought a little bitterly, since Fugaku was becoming a little obsessed with bringing in more power for the clan, which unfortunately focus on Itachi. "I see," Itachi muttered as he watched his little brother happily munch away on his foot and watching his mother laugh at the funny faces Sasuke was making. "I made a friend today," he said as he stared outside the window, not seeing his mother turn her head to look at him in surprise. "Really?" she asked, not wanting to hide her joy since Itachi did not have any friends outside of the clan. "May I ask who?" "Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," he said and watched in slight amusement at the delighted look that quickly appeared on his mother's face as she clapped her hands together. "Ma," Sasuke said, watching at his mother become suddenly very happy that made him turn his head in confusion. "Oh, that is wonderful, Itachi-kun. I was wondering when the two of you would become friends. Oh, you will become just like me and Kushina, I just know it. I think I would like that, Ka-san," he said as Makoto smiled at her eldest. "I am going to go to my room. I feel a little tired." "Okay, I will see you later, Itachi-kun," she said, kissing her son's forehead, truly happy that he made a friend. Though Itachi was used to his mother giving him affection, he rarely showed that it had any effect on him. Though for this time, the young Uchiha let a small smile appear on his face. Just as he left the room and without his mother looking, he put his hand in one of the drawers by the door and pulled out a few blank slips of small paper. As Itachi walked down the empty corridors of his clan compound, he stopped for a moment at a mirror that was hanging on the walls. When he did, he closed his eyes for a moment before opening them again. However, this time instead of his onyx-colored eyes looking back at him, it was instead a pair of red eyes with two tomo in each eye. With Naruto. "Is anyone home?" Naruto called out, waiting to get an answer as he stepped into his home. In the kitchen, Naru-chan, he heard his mother's voice call. He walked in and saw his mother by the stove with the twins both in their high chairs looking up at the ceiling. Though when they saw him both giggled a little and waved their arms at him. He waved back at them. "Where is Tu-san? Your Tu-san will be home in a few minutes. Just some last-minute work he had to finish. Go up and get washed for dinner," she said, not taking her eyes away from the stove. "Yeah, okay Ka-chan," Naruto answered as he walked away and went upstairs. He looked back to see his mother had now moved from the stove and was now playing with the twins. It made Naruto feel a pang of sadness in his chest, but he shook out of it. As he walked home he had wondered about elemental ninjutsu. He knew he was not ready for such a big step yet, but seeing his new friend Itachi use the fireball jutsu earlier that day, it made him want to try as well, and it sparked something inside of him. He was amazed at how far Itachi was in his studies and had mentally decided he needed to catch up. He decided he would have to up his training with Shizune and Sarutobi the next time he saw them, which was in 2 days' time. Deciding to wash up in a moment, he quietly made his way to his father's office and delicately turned the handle. Walking into his father's office he looked over to the giant bookshelf. The bookshelf was a giant store of various jutsus his parents had mastered as well as documented. His main attention though was on elemental ninjutsu. He remembered his father had told him once that he had a wind element which was rare in Konoha while his mother had water element. Looking at the shelves his eyes stopped at one that read C-ranked water ninjutsu. He took it and opened it and stopped at the first page. On each page was a name of a jutsu while a small containment seal lay beneath it. He looked through the first few pages before one stuck out for him. Water style. Water bullet technique, he read aloud and figured that would be perfect. Thanks to his studying Fuinjutsu and completing level 1 already, he pressed his hand against the seal and in small puff of smoke a small scroll lay on top of the page. He quickly put the book back where it was and hid the scroll under his shirt before quickly leaving the office and heading to his own room. He doubted his parents would know since they did not check the books over often, and he would put the scroll back soon. He would quickly copy the contents of the scroll onto a blank scroll he had in his room and then put the original back where it belonged. Next day, Naruto followed along the path towards the open space in the forest that he had met Itachi at with his shinobi pouch strapped once again to the side of his pants, while on his left was 2 scrolls. One contained his little seal making kit that he practiced with almost every day. The other one had the copied contents of the water jutsu scroll that he took from his parents' water scroll. He put the original back into the storing book and put it back where it belonged when his father had left for work while his mother was feeling the twins. He knew he might be in trouble if his parents ever found out, but he figured what they did not know did not hurt him. Plus it is not like Tu-san or Ka-chan really spend time with me anymore, he thought to himself. Though he did not hate his little brother and sister and did in fact love them both dearly, he couldn't help but feel a little jealous towards them. Since they were born just over 2 years ago, his parents' focus was mainly on them. He wished Kushina and Minato just made some time for him, no matter how little that might be. Shaking his head of the negative thoughts and following the path he took the other day, he felt Itachi's energy signature just like yesterday, and he knew the Uchiha was close by. Walking into the small area he saw Itachi standing in the center of the opening with his back to Naruto. As Naruto walked towards him, Itachi picked up on his footsteps and turned around. When he spotted Naruto he nodded at him. "Morning Itachi," Naruto greeted happily as Itachi nodded back towards him. "So what were you going to work on today?" Naruto asked while Itachi was about to speak before he saw the scroll strapped to Naruto's side. "What are the scrolls for?" Itachi asked with his eyes gazing towards the 2 scrolls in curiosity. "Oh well," Naruto said as he began scratching the back of his head in slight nerves. "This one contains my Fuinjutsu equipment since I was thinking of getting some practice in," he said as Itachi nodded his head. One of the things Naruto had told him about was that he wanted to surpass his parents in Fuinjutsu, so he knew how much Naruto would have to practice to do such a thing. "And this other may be a water jutsu that I may have taken from my dad's office," he said, biting his lip as Itachi looked at his friend with a slightly amused look. "So you stole it?" he asked with an eyebrow raised on his face. For a 7-year-old he could be oddly serious. "Not stole, borrowed. But I did put it back." "Then how is it strapped to the side of your pants pocket?" "I may have copied everything inside on a blank scroll," he said, scratching his chin as Itachi shook his head. He had a feeling hanging out with Naruto is going to lead to some interesting situations in the future. Shaking his head, Itachi reached into his pouch pocket and pulled out 2 pieces of paper and handed one over to Naruto, who took it and looked at it oddly. What is this for? Naruto asked, looking it over. It was just a slip of small paper that was completely blank on both sides. Do you know what these are? Itachi asked his new friend. I think so. I recognize it since I think my Jiji told me about them once, but I forgot the name. They help tell you something about your chakra, right? Naruto said, staring at the blank piece of paper. Itachi nodded his head. Maitu-san called them chakra paper. They help us find out what our element affinity is. Element affinity. So it tells us which of the element jutsus we can do and can be best at, right? He said as Itachi nodded. That is how I understand it too, he said. I thought you might want to find out your element or elements since you showed interest in them the other day. Definitely. It's the main reason I took this water jutsu, since I wanted to be able to do it too. Though how does the paper tell us? He asked as Itachi explained. Maitu-san said that it differs from each element. He said that if it burns it is fire, water then it gets soggy, earth it crumbles away, wind it splits into 2 pieces, and then lightning if it crinkles. Cool. So do you know what yours are? Naruto asked, since finding out what element he was definitely something he wanted to do. He had asked his Jiji some time back which is where, and found his Jiji was fire, and also found out that Minato was wind while his mother was water. It explained why they had so many wind and water jutsus stored away. Itachi nodded and Naruto watched as a faint blue glow appeared around the paper as the young Uchiha poured some of his chakra into it. Naruto watched in fascination towards the slip of paper and then watched as Naruto got his answer. On one half the slip of paper set alight while on the other half water. Goddamn, thought it was only a little before it completely set alight. Before Naruto counsel answer, Itachi did instead. My main element is fire, which is not surprising since my clan is known for our strong affinity to fire. However, I was surprised when I discovered I had a minor affinity for water, which is extremely rare for my clan. So is that why you could do the fire jutsu so easily? In a way, the fireball jutsu is a rite of passage for all Uchiha members. Meaning everyone in my family had to learn it by the time they were my age, Itachi explained while Naruto nodded. He had to admit that Itachi's clan sounded pretty cool. He also wondered if his family had some kind of rite of passage they had to go through, or any of the others' clans in Konoha. So cool. Man, I am so pumped. I have to find out what mine is now, Naruto said, grinning eagerly at the piece of paper in his hand. He closed his eyes and gripped the slip of paper tightly in his paper. He pouted his chakra into the paper, making it glow a faint blue. Itachi stood just in front of it waiting to see what the end result was going to be. When Naruto opened his eyes, the two got their answer. Though it was an answer neither had been quite prepared for. The paper had split right down the middle, shaving the two equally in half. On the left side the paper completed crumbled away, while on the other slip of paper, it became all soggy and wet. Whoa, both Naruto and Itachi said at the same time as they observed the small spectacle in front of them. Amazing, Itachi said, not fully believing what he just witnessed. What exactly does that mean? Naruto thought as he looked at the slips of paper in his hand. Does this mean I have 3 elements? He said to himself aloud, not entirely sure he believed him with what just happened. It appears that is what just happened, Itachi said, finally wrapping his head around it. It is surprising since my mother once said that it was very rare for someone to have even 2 affinities, since it usually indicates that they have a bloodline. Though I was unaware your family had one. Well, I know neither side of my family is a bloodline of those sorts. My Ka-chan's side is that has strong life force along with naturally high stamina and chakra. At least I think that is what it was. So how did I get 3? I do not know. I guess it was just one of those 1 in a million happenings, Itachi said with Naruto nodding. Wind, water and earth. I can get so strong if I master them one day. But what would everyone think if I tell them? Plus Ka-chan and Tu-san may find out I took a jutsu from their library without asking, as he bit his lip. Then Jiji, Nei-chan and Ba-chan might get angry that I am doing this without telling them, he thought, since he really did not want a skull bashing by either Shizune, Tsunade, or even worse, both. The two were crazy strong. Plus he dared not think what his mother would do. She was known as the red-hot habanero for a reason, and even Naruto knew not to cross his mother when she was in one of her moods. "Hey Itachi," he called, getting the boy to look at him. "Do you think we could keep this between us for now? No one knows I am looking into elemental ninjutsu, and they would probably tell them I am not ready for it yet. So could we maybe keep this between us for now?" Itachi raised an eyebrow at the question but shrugged and nodded, indicating that it was not a problem. Naruto thanked him and the two got to their training. While Itachi went back to practicing his shuriken jutsu, Naruto began looking over the water scroll with a new burst of life and energy. Now that he knew he had water element, it made him want to tackle this jutsu and get it down even more so than before. Chapter 5. The beginning of the rest of your life. Minato stood on the small platform as he overlooked the academy ground, as well as the new academy students stood in front of them, all with looks of concentration on their faces. At the back the parents stood as they watched this proud moment that a lot of them had been waiting a long time to see. Today you make your first steps into becoming a shinobi and your first step to becoming a protector of the Leaf Village. You all start your journey on the road to becoming ninja to protect Konoha and all of the Land of Fire, but what does it mean to protect? Why should you protect this village and country? That is a question you will eventually have to answer yourself. However, being a ninja is a serious job, so not do so lightly. Your comrades in this village depend on you, so do your loved ones. One only becomes strong when they have something that they are willing to protect to the death. Step forward today and makes us all proud. The new academy students clapped loudly, as did the parents, as the fourth Hokage gave them all a wave of embarrassment from all the cheering they were giving him before suddenly he disappeared in a yellow flash. As he disappeared, a similar head of blonde hair looking down at the ground and just gave a tiny sigh as he watched his father disappear. "You okay, Naruto?" His friend Itachi, who was standing beside him, asked as he had seen him sigh when his father had flashed away. Naruto just nodded. "Yeah, I am fine. I was hoping he would stay to wish we good luck, but I guess that was just wishful thinking." As the instructors began to call out names signaling for what person would be in whose class, Naruto stared behind him to see a lot of the parents conversing with each other and happily talking with one another. His Nei-chan and his Jiji were there and gave him a small wave when they saw him look in their direction. Naruto gave them a half smile and waved back. He looked over a little ways to the right of them and saw Itachi's parents standing there. Fugaku had his usual emotionless face on, just staring at the sky, while Makoto was next to him with Sasuke gripped onto the hem of her dress, while in her arms she held a small bundle that was wrapped in light pink blankets. Makoto was carrying her daughter Ria Uchiha, who was born 3 months ago and had taken the Uchiha clan by surprise, especially Itachi, who never thought he would get another sibling other than Sasuke. Though when she was born, Naruto had never seen his best friend smile as big as he had when he had told her about little Ria. As he scanned the mass of parents, he had noted that a certain redhead was not at the ceremony, which was one of the reasons he felt so down right now. His mother had decided it was best not to go to his genin induction. Though this time it was not the twins or work duties that kept her away this time. Just like Makoto, Kushina had been given the biggest surprise when she discovered she too was expecting another child. It made her extremely happy, especially when she and Minato discovered they were expecting another girl. While Naruto was genuinely happy that he would get another younger sibling, it also meant that he would be saying goodbye once again to any quality time with his parents. 9 months later, little Mina Uzumaki had been born, this time in the Leaf Hospital and with no crazy giant foxes trying to destroy the village. One look at her and everyone knew she would grow up to be the carbon copy of Kushina. Little tufts of red hair lay on top of her head with the same skin tone and even the same violet eyes that Kushina and Naruto had. Though he was weary of the fact at first, when he held his youngest and newest sister in his arms for the first time, just like Itachi had with Ria, Naruto quickly loved his baby sister and silently promised her that he would protect her and would get strong to protect her and the rest of their family. His and Itachi's drive to train and get stronger hit a new intensity when their baby sisters were born. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Naruto heard as the noise went silent and all watched as Naruto walked over to the man who just called him. He was a man in his early 30s with brown hair and eyes, wearing the standard Chunin uniform. "Namikaze-sama, I will be your instructor for the next 4 years. I am Itamo Oba." It is nice to meet you, Oba-sensei. Please look after me, Naruto said, bowing a little and in a polite tone. Naruto got in line with some of the others kids that were in his class. He smiled when Itachi was called by their sensei, which meant they would be in the same class together. He was happy to have one friend with him. After about 20 minutes the parents all said their goodbyes, as well as Shizune and Hiruzen, who gave Naruto a good luck and goodbye before they left. Walking through the academy, they arrived in their classroom and quickly took their seats. Naruto and Itachi sat in one of the middle rows. They were joined in the middle row by a purple-haired girl who gave them both a shy hello, which they happily reciprocated. As they sat in their seats and listened as their new sensei explained the life of a shinobi and elaborated on the speech Minato had given them earlier, Naruto took a look around the room to see if there was anyone he recognized. Other than Itachi, the only other girl he recognized was a girl sitting at the front. She had brown hair with slightly tanned skin and had red fang marks on each of her cheeks. By her legs he saw 3 little puppies all snuggled together and were leaning on her leg as her hand scratched one of the on the head. An Inuzuka, Naruto whispered, to which Itachi heard and nodded. Her name is Hana Inuzuka, the heiress of the Inuzuka clan. My Ka-san and hers are old friend back from their genin days, he said as Naruto nodded. I think the same for mine. Continuing to look around the room, there were 2 others that stood out to him. One was a sickly-looking child who was coughing every few minutes. His skin was slightly pale and looked like he could be knocked over by a simple gust of wind. He had brown hair and arc eyes and rested his arms on the desk. The girl beside him was a purple-haired girl that had her hair tied up in a pineapple-shaped ponytail. She had a dark shirt on along with a slightly tanned skirt. She was playing with a kunai in her hands and looked like she wanted to throw it at the nearest person she could find. Naruto shook his head before his mind wandered elsewhere and thought about his current strength. His Fuinjutsu had now completed level 2 and was now moving on to level 3. Hiruzen no longer acted surprised when it came to his Fuinjutsu. He knew Naruto was in every way a prodigy when it came to the art. Since level 2 focused on weight seals and things of that nature, he and Hiruzen applied a few weight seals to him to help with his body conditioning and to improve his strength and stamina. He had mastered the water jutsu he took from his parents' library, thought it took him a little while to fully get it down. Afterwards he just found water jutsus just fitted him, and since his parents were so focused on Kushina's pregnancy, neither noticed him make a few more stops to their library. Now he knew 3 water jutsus while Itachi had knew 3 fire jutsus. His training with Shizune continued and was surprised when Tsunade got involved and decided that since Hiruzen was teaching him Fuinjutsu and Shizune his chakra control, she would teach him taijutsu since it was one of her specialties. She had tried to show him the slug-style taijutsu, but she quickly found it just did not fit his style at all. So instead she began showing him the senju style. Even though she did not use it often herself, she was trained in it since it was her clan's taijutsu style. While it was not perfect for him, he made it work, plus Tsunade had been adjusting small parts of the style to help fit him. She even had Might Guy, Konoha's resident taijutsu expert, come and take a look at the style for Naruto. Guy had cried out how wonderful it was that Naruto was training to become a great shinobi and cried out about some youth for whoever knows why. Guy even showed him some of the Goken style. When Naruto showed an aptitude for that style as well, Guy and Tsunade decided to entwine the 2 styles together and create something completely new. They didn't have a name for it yet, but Naruto knew it had to be something awesome. And when it came to taijutsu, Naruto was learning quickly as well, once again showing that being a prodigy and being hard-working was already paying off for him. Naruto, pay attention, Itachi said, elbowing him in the side, jogging Naruto back to attention. Right, sorry, Naruto whispered back as Itachi shook his head at his friend's habit of letting his mind wander. Naruto paid close attention to his sensei and what he was discussing to the class, thought he had noticed that some of it Shizune had already covered in his studies with her. I don't think the academy is all it is cracked up to be, he thought to himself as he shook his head and tried to drown out his sensei's voice. The purple-haired girl next to Naruto saw his lazy form and the look on his face and covered her mouth to stop from giggling. Young lady, is there something you wish to say to the class? Their sensei said, who looked like he did not enjoy being interrupted, while all student eyes fell onto the purple-haired girl. The girl blushed a little and twiddled her index fingers together. No sir, "Sorry sensei. What is your name?" he asked looking towards her. The girl stuttered a little. "Why Yugao Uezuki?" "Well then Miss Uzuki, please try and keep any comments of noises to yourself," he said before he continued with his teachings. Nodding, she fell quiet as the rest of the class fell back to listening to their sensei, everyone except Naruto, who had turned his attention to Yugao. "What were you laughing at?" he asked since he had heard her giggle from beside him. "I was laughing at you. You had a funny look on your face and made me laugh," she said as Naruto's eyes shot up in surprise before internally he grinned. "You mean expressions like this?" he asked before he began pulling multiple different faces at Yugao, who was turning red and had to cover her mouth with her hands. Their sensei never saw any of this as Naruto pulled funny faces at Yugao, who looked ready to burst out laughing. Next to him Itachi rolled his eyes, though half a smile on his face as he watched his friend act that way. Though Naruto was a lot like him and was quiet and serious most of the time, he had moments where a more fun-loving personality took hold of him. It was a lot like his mother's in that way. Naruto had inherited more than just his eyes from his mother. From the front row Hana Inuzuka saw what he was doing and laughed into her hand as well, thinking that what he was doing was very funny. While at the back row the other purple-haired girl and the sickly boy laughed as well, though the sickly boy needed to cough every few minutes, which gained much attention from their sensei. End of the day. At the end of their first academy day most of the children went home to their parents so they could tell them all about the great first day and what they had learned. Everyone except for a group of 6 children, that is, Naruto and Itachi, were once again training with each other in the same opening in the forest as before. The others 4 had followed them after school to see what they were doing. The 4 were none other than Hana Inuzuka, Yugao Uzuki, Enko Mitarashi and Hayate Gecko. The 4 had become quick friends, but when they had tried to befriend Naruto and Itachi, the 2 boys kept eluding them and separated themselves from everyone else. They almost spoke with them during lunch, but the academy school bell rung and when they looked back the 2 boys had already disappeared. "Hayate-kun, stop coughing or they will know we are here," Yugao said to the ill boy, who nodded. "My apologies Yugao-san, the pollen from the plants is making it difficult to breathe," he said as he tried to get his coughing under control. "Shish, stop talking you two or our cover will be blow," Hana whispered a little harshly while Enko grinned as she watched them. "I wonder how strong they are. I bet they would be a good fight," she said, licking her lips a little before zoning in on scene in front of them. Wait, where did the Uchiha go? They all looked in front of them and realized that Itachi had indeed disappeared and that Naruto was now just standing still and was looking towards where they were hidden. "You know, you 4 can come out now. We know you have been following us since we left the academy," Naruto called out, making the 4 freeze in place. "We would appreciate it if you could just come on out," a voice said from behind them, making them jump out of their skin and turn around to see Itachi with an amused expression on his face. "You know, if you wanted to watch us or train with us you could have must come out and say it. There was no need to just hide," Naruto added appeared in front of them. The 4 kids looked a little embarrassed and went a little red. From Hana's side the 3 pups sniffed the air and patted over towards Naruto. Naruto saw the 3 pups and smiled as he went down on his knees and began petting them. The pups seemed to enjoy it since they were wagging their tails and had their tongues hanging out of their mouths. "Whoa, that was quick," Hana said as she walked towards them. "I have only had them for about 6 months and they have never taken to someone so quickly before. They must really like you. They are called the 3 Harimaru brothers," she said, introducing them. The 6 introduced themselves properly and after a few minutes of talking and Enko asking whether they could train with them, Naruto and Itachi shrugged and told them it was fine. As the 4 revised what they had gone over that day, Enko looked towards Naruto and Itachi and saw that the 2 boys were facing across from each other. In the blink of an eye the 2 suddenly charged forwards towards each other and began throwing punch and kicks towards each other. They stayed that way for a few minutes as each tried to land a hit on each other. The 4 recognized Itachi's way of fighting was that of the Uchiha clan fighting style, while the one Naruto was using looked like the Senju style, though a few bits of it was off and it looked like another form that they did not recognize. It also made them wonder why Naruto was not suing the Uzumaki style that his mother knew, since Kushina was quite well known for her strong taijutsu prowess. The 2 were then forced and stumbled back when both managed to land a punch on the other's cheek. Shaking out of their slightly dazed state, the two quickly focused their chakra and made the necessary hand seals. Fire-style fireball jutsu, Itachi called out as he blew out a large fireball that went towards Naruto. Water-style water bullet jutsu, Naruto declared as clumps of water shot out from his mouth. The toe-jutsus collided in the middle, causing a small blast to be created from the impact as well as steam from where the water met the fire. The steam caused the view of the two to get blocked out for a few minutes as the four tried to make out where the two boys were. Though they knew they were fighting if the sounds they could hear were any indication. "They are incredible," Yugao said as she watched their sparring bout with each other. "I didn't think people our age could do elemental ninjutsu. I mean, they are so hard to do and the chakra control has to be so precise." Hayate spoke as he coughed again into his hand, making Yugao pat him on the back. "Oh man, these two are good. We really need to catch up with them if they are already at this kind of level," Hana said while Yugao and Hayate nodded before noticing Anko had disappeared. "Where is Anko-san?" Hayate asked, looking around. "Striking shadow snakes," a voice called from within the steam cloud. When it did, Naruto appeared jumping out of the cloud from one side while Itachi jumped out the other, both looking a little surprised from the interruption. The steam mist disappeared and they were all surprised to see Anko in the middle with what looked like two fairly large green snakes coming out from her sleeves, both impacting the ground where Naruto and Itachi were formerly standing. "Snakes," they all thought while Naruto and Itachi narrowed their eyes as the snakes and the purple-haired girl. They were wary of her suddenly because of that snake jutsu she used. There was only one person that both were aware of that had connections to snakes and who could use snake-like jutsus, and that man was no longer part of the Leaf and was one of the worst traitors that the world had ever seen. Itachi's parents had told him while Hiruzen and Tsunade had told Naruto of this man. So it left the question to the two boys that was, now on both of their minds. How can she do snake techniques? Anko meanwhile grinned at Hana, Yugao, and Hayate shocked looks and Naruto and Itachi's weary and thinking looks. "You boys didn't think you were the only toe with tricks up their sleeve, did you?" Month later. Some time passed since the 6 academy students met each other and the 6 quickly became fast friends and an inseparable group. Since the first training session, the 6 met up whenever they could and would spar with one another and help each other get stronger. The academy quickly saw that Naruto and Itachi were prodigies after only a few days. It was mainly noticeable when the two were first showed how to do the henge technique and managed to master it by the end of the day, which left the instructors baffled. Itachi was quickly becoming known as the prodigy of the Uchiha clan, where Fugaku and Makoto were immensely proud of their son, while Naruto was the same for his family. He was even surprised when Kushina and Minato had hugged the life out of him when they found out. Though the small celebration did not last long, Naruto enjoyed that moment where his parents' eyes and attention was focused only on him. Tsunade, Hiruzen and Shizune marveled at it, though since they were training him before the academy it did not come as much of a surprise. Meanwhile Anko was quickly becoming the best of the girls, though Yugao and Hana were doing their best to give her a run for her money. Though Anko was strong for her age, she was not quite at Naruto and Itachi's level, though when she sparred with the two, she made sure to make them sweat as much as possible. "So Gigi, are you sure you don't mind taking me?" Naruto asked Hiruzen as they walked down the market towards a shinobi store that Hiruzen had told him about and had wanted to take him to for some time now. "Of course Naruto-kun, now that you are in the academy it's time to get you some proper shinobi clothing and some proper weapons and equipment. Even though it's the person that makes the shinobi, it is essential that you have the correct equipment with you and that you are wearing appropriate clothing." Hiruzen glanced down at his surrogate grandson. "So an orange jumpsuit would definitely be out then," Naruto said, pointing towards an orange get-up in the window of one of the stores. "Unless you want to be a walking target, then yes Naruto, it is definitely out," Hiruzen said, shaking at the mere thought of someone wearing clothing that color. Somewhere in Konoha a jonin wearing tight green spandexes with orange leg warmer sneezed. "But I didn't bring enough money Gigi," Naruto said as he began checking his pockets. "I'm not sure I can afford it. Ka-chan and Tu-san forgot to give me my pocket money this week." "Do not worry about money Naruto-kun. I will buy you everything you need," he said, patting the boy on the shoulder. Naruto wanted to argue, but he knew his Gigi would only tell him that a grandfather was allowed to spoil his grandson whenever he wanted. Plus his Jiji was a former Kage, so if there was anyone who knew the right equipment to wear and the correct clothing, then it was him. He was the man who fought in the first Shinobi War, was picked by Tobimura Senju to become his successor and lead the Leaf to victory in the second and third Shinobi Wars. Okay Jiji. Naruto answered, getting a smile from Sarutobi in return. He was happy that Hiruzen still spent time with him and trained him even when he actually had a real grandson now. Konohamaru Sarutobi was born a month before little Mina was born by Hikaru Sarutobi, his eldest child and only daughter. And they named him after the village since they knew he was going to be a great shinobi one day. After walking for another 10 minutes, they eventually stopped at a moderate-sized store on the edge of the shinobi district of the market. I have been coming to this store since I was a young man, Naruto-kun. There is no place better in my mind to get your shinobi supplies than this store, he said as he led the Naruto inside. As soon as they walked in, Naruto saw locking seals on the door hinges. To stop burglars, he mused to himself. Tyranno. Sarutobi called out just as a man in his mid-30s appeared from behind the counter with brown hair and wearing civilian clothing. Ah Hiruzen, it's good to see you. What can I help you with? He asked as he noticed Naruto beside him. And this must be Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of the Minato and Kushina. I was wondering when you were going to bring him here. Now that Naruto-kun is in the academy, I believed it was time to get him his proper shinobi gear. Well, I am honored you came to my store. I am glad the shinobi of the village continued to come here even after my father passed the store down to me. To-san, look. A squeaky voice called, making them look over to see a little brown-haired girl with her hair tied in two buns wearing a little pink top and shorts with a wooden kunai in her hands. I can finally throw it on the target right, she said, making Tyranno and Hiruzen laugh. That is great, sweetie. Hiruzen, you remember my daughter Tenten? He said as Hiruzen gave her a small hello, as did Naruto, while the girl went towards her father, who lifted her up and sat her on the counter. Naruto looked around the store, and it was no wonder why the place was popular with the shinobi in the village, as well as why his Jiji liked it so much. On the walls as well as in secure racks were weapons of all different types. Swords, axes, nunchaku, sai, and a whole range more. On another side were rows and row of different clothing ranging from kids his age to people the size of Akamichis, and were in a variety of colors, though most were dark colors, the brightest being a purple and red top and skirt. This also cool, he said as he began to pick through the clothing range and find something that suited him, while Hiruzen spoke with Tyranno and cooed over little Tenten. 10 minutes later he had 5 black tops with a blue stripe going through the middle, while he had 5 sets of pants and sandals that ranged from black and gray in color. Next he moved on to his kunai and shuriken. The ones he currently had been ones Minato previous used and had given to Naruto since they were still in great condition. Hiruzen joined him and began helping him. He nodded approvingly at the clothes Naruto picked out. A kunai and shuriken made of chakra metal. Good eye, Naruto. Chakra metal? Naruto asked, not quite remembering what it was. It is metal that allows chakra to run through it, so that it makes the attack stronger than just using it normally, he said as Naruto marveled at it. He wondered why more ninjas did not use it, though when he thought about it, his mother used a sword, and when he had seen her using it before the twins were born, he remembered it glowed blue. He realized it must have been chakra metal. They added them to the basket and continued looking through the small aisles. They also got to a small section that had scrolls and inks for fuinjutsu. They also sold sealing scrolls. Naruto didn't know that someone could sell sealing scrolls or other sealing-related equipment. He made a memory to save that information for later. Finally they browsed at the different weapons they had on display as Naruto and Hiruzen looked over them. You know, Naruto, your mother is very powerful when it comes to the art of a sword. She could probably fight the 7 swordsmen equally and come out on top if she wanted to. Hiruzen said as he picked up a katana, looked it over and handed it to Naruto. Maybe you might follow in her footsteps. Naruto took the katana in his right hand. He held it in his hand and swung it through the air a little. He looked it over and had to admit it was a beautiful katana, and he knew the art of a sword was a major area of being a shinobi. There was Kiri, who he knew had the 7 shinobi swordsmen of the mist, 7 of the best there was with a sword. Kumo, he had been told, learnt an academy style of kenjutsu whilst in the academy and normally carried a sword with them. Then there was Iron Country where they had samurai instead of shinobi and were training extensively in the art of kenjutsu. Hiruzen watched as a frown appeared on his face. What's the matter, Naruto-kun? I'm not too sure, Gigi. It is just the sword does not feel right in my hands, he said as Hiruzen and Torano looked in surprise. Interesting, they both thought. As for the next 10 minutes Naruto tried handling all the swords that Torano had, but yet all of them just did not feel right in Naruto's hands, with him saying that they just felt off. This is an interesting development, Hiruzen said, tapping his chin. Are you sure wielding a sword is something you want, Naruto? Naruto just nodded his head. I want to be a great kenjutsu user and to one day surpass my Ka-chan. Torano listened in and spoke what he was thinking. You know, when my father ran this store he always told me that a sword were like an extension of one's arm and that swords in a way have a life of their own. He said that the wielder does not choose the sword, but instead the sword chooses the wielder. Maybe the reason you don't connect with the swords is because the sword you are supposed to wield has not been made yet, he offered as Hiruzen and Naruto thought about it. Little Ten meanwhile just listened and watched from the top of the counter. Would you make the sword? Hiruzen asked as Torano shook his head. Not myself, but I have a trader from Iron Country that visits here a few times a year. He worked for my father and even did some business with. I can contact him and ask for a blacksmith to construct a sword for Naruto. The man he does dealing with, believe it or not, is Muramasa Sengo, he said, getting a look of surprise from Hiruzen. Who is that, Gigi? Naruto asked. Muramasa Sengo is one of the best blacksmiths of our era, Naruto-kun. His katanas and weapons he makes are works of art and many would like to get their hands on one of his swords. He is also the man who built your mother's katana, Torano said, getting a look of surprise from Naruto. He had only seen his mother katana a few times since she always kept it in a storage seal on her wrist, but it was truly a beautiful katana. It was called the Kidetsu. Seeing his mother wield a blade was one of the reasons he wanted to become great at kenjutsu and to one day surpass her, since she was the best in Konoha. Would you really be able to get Muramasa Sengo to make Naruto a sword? Hiruzen asked as Torano nodded. He was good friends with my father and always offered to help him. He gave me the same courtesy. Knowing that he is building a first-class katana for a boy who wants to be a great kenjutsu wielder and uses its strength to protect those precious to him, I know he will say yes. It might take a month or two, but expect one of the finest katanas you will ever see becoming yours, Naruto, he said, making the boy smile brightly. We can sort out payment later, he said as they all nodded and paid for the current equipment in their basket. Chapter 6. Team 13 formed. So I would like everyone to say congratulations to your classmates Itachi Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and Enko Mitsurushi for passing the academy in just 1 year. Wish them all the best as they take their first major step as shinobi of the leaf. Naruto, Itachi and Enko stood at the front of their class with smiles on their face as their fellow students called and told them well done. After a year at the academy, the teachers there along with the council knew that despite only being 9, that the 3 were more than ready to become genin. All 3 easily outclassed the others in the class and that keeping them in the academy would be a waste of their talents. Yugao, Hayate and Hana clapped the loudest to their friends and had sworn that they would do their best to catch up with the trio by next year. Now the real path of being a shinobi begins, Naruto said as Itachi nodded like he normally did while Enko grinned a big smile. It's about time too. I was beginning to get so bored here that I thought my head was going to roll off my shoulders from the boredom. I am honored to have the 3 of you in my class for the little time that you were here. Good luck in your shinobi careers. I know that all 3 of you are going to go far, their sensei said as he bowed back. Thank you, sensei, they said at the same time. Your new Jonin sensei has told me that you will meet them on the roof and that they will be there in 10 minutes time. The 3 nodded, gave a wave to their 3 friends who did the same before they exited the classroom. As they got out of the room they nodded to each other before mange the ram seal with their hand and shunshine to the roof. They had learnt that move from Hiruzen after Naruto had asked him to teach him a jutsu during one of their breaks from Fuinjutsu. He had thought about it for a few minutes before settling that Naruto was ready to learn the body flicker technique. Once he taught it to Naruto, the blonde boy then taught it to the others. Hana, Hayate and Yugao struggled with it and was still trying to learn it while Itachi and Enko had it down within a few days. Arriving on the roof the 3 sat together on the floor. Naruto read a book on fuinjutsu. Itachi stared at the clouds while Anko twirled a kunai around her index finger. So any idea who we have as our sensei? Anko asked the two boys. Both shook their heads. No idea, but I hope they are strong whoever they are. I can't wait to get some more training done, Naruto said, showing just how much of a training nut he was. Thankfully it was not on the level of a certain spandex-wearing jonin. Whoever they are, I am sure they are capable. Hokage-sama would not have put us with someone who could not handle the task. As they nodded, Naruto gripped his hand a little tightly on the sword that he was carrying in his right hand before he placed it in his lap. After 2 months of the order going out from Torino at the shinobi store, the katana that he was waiting for finally arrived. And when he first saw it, he could not help but admire how beautiful and different it was. Torino even said it must have been one of Masamune's finest work. The blade was 27 inches long and the metal was much to his surprise black with a distinct red edge, and its hand guard had flower-like edges. The handle was a dark purple color while the sheath was plain black but had 2 Uzumaki spirals in red going up the side. One of the first things Naruto noticed was that it was a little bit heavier than other swords, but he was told that was due to the metal of the blade being harder and denser than other blades, which would give it more physical strength. He knew it would take a bit of time to get used to it, but since his weight seal were now up to 30 pounds on each limb, he knew the weight of the blade would not be a problem. When he had received it, he, Hiruzen, Shizune and Tsunade had marveled at how elegant yet powerful the blade looked, with all three claiming they had never seen a blade quite like it. After receiving it, he had given it a name that he knew would one day make this blade famous. The Shisui. Everyone else agreed that the name just fit the blade. He made a storage seal on his wrist similar to his where his mother kept hers, since he wanted to keep the Shisui on him at all times. He tried to show Kushina the blade, but she only looked at it while it was in its sheath, much to his annoyance. He debated in his head whether to ask her to teach him kenjutsu, but due to past experiences of wanting to ask either Kushina and Minato to train him, he decided against it and figured he would eventually come across a style that worked for him. Until then he could practice with it nonetheless. When it was not sealed up, it was strung to his side. He didn't want to strap it since it just felt right staying in his hands. If I ever meet Muramasa, then I must give him my eternal thanks for this, he thought. As he thought about his sword, an energy signature he recognized appeared to be heading towards them at a great speed. Itachi and Anko saw him tense up a little and were now on alert, since they recognized when Naruto could sense someone. While they readied to defend themselves, they saw Naruto quickly relax, indicating whoever it was they were not hostile towards them. Just as they three settled, a swirl of leaves appeared in front of them. When the leaves all disappeared, they all looked in surprise, especially Itachi when the person standing in front of them was none other than a Jonin uniform-clad Makoto holding little Ria in her arms, who was giggling madly. "Makoto Obasan. Ka-san, what are you doing here?" Itachi asked, since he was surprised to see his mother wearing her Jonin uniform. He could not remember the last time had seen her in her old shinobi uniform, which looked like most of the other uniforms, except she had an only one sleeve, leaving the other arm bare, and wrapped around her left thigh was a gray sash with the kanji for fire on it, while on her back was a strapped tanto. "Well, is that not obvious, Itachi-kun? You were waiting for your Jonin-sensei and here I am," she said, getting 3 gobsmacked looks before Naruto fist-pumped the air. "Awesome. Makoto Obasan is our sensei," he cheered as little Ria looked a little confused but cheered as well. Anko looked happy since she knew that Makoto Uchiha, aka Konoha no Hai Misuteresu, Fire Mistress of Konoha, was one of the best kunoichis in the village. She was up there with Tsunade and Kushina. "Are you sure, Ka-san? But what about Sasuke and Ria? And does Tu-san know about this?" "Do not worry, Itachi-kun. Sasuke will stay with one of our sitters while Ria will be with me during our D-rank missions. Then when we eventually get to higher missions, I will arrange for some of the other clan members to watch over them while I am with you all. And do not worry about your father. Even if he does not like it, I am a shinobi of this village and I felt it was time to get back into this life. Plus I have always wanted to take a genin team, and who better than the team my son is in," she said, kissing his forehead, making him blush a little while Ria sat in her big brother's lap. "Well, now that I am here, we can introduce ourselves to one another, since it is a must-do for a new team," she said as she sat in front of her new team. "Say your name, your likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams for the future. I will start." My name is Makoto Uchiha. I like my family, fire jutsus, my friends in the village. My dislikes are traitors, rapists, those who hurt children and those that dare to hurt my family. My hobbies are learning something new every day and cooking. My dreams for the future has already come true, she said as she looked at her oldest and youngest and smiled. Enko, why don't you start? My name is Enko Mitsurishi. I like my few friends, Dango, fighting and blood, she said, making them sweat drop a little at the last part. My dislikes are perverts, men who think women can't be as strong as them, arrogance and more. My hobbies are making people who I don't like miserable. My dreams for the future, to kill a certain white snake, she said as she got serious at the last part. Her two teammates looked at her curiosity since she had never mentioned that last part before whilst Makoto narrowed her eyes. She, like the other higher-ups in the village, were aware of Enko's past and understood why she wanted that as her dream. Itachi was up next. My name is Itachi Uchiha. My likes are my friends, family, ninjutsu and genjutsu and visiting cafes. My dislikes are those who try to hurt my precious people, stake, and those who think they are better than everyone else and who only crave power for selfish reasons. My hobbies are meditating and training to be a great shinobi. My dream is to protect my home and surpass the Uchihas of old. And now our last member, she said, nodding to Naruto, who nodded. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. My likes are my precious people, ramen, fuinjutsu and kenjutsu. My dislikes are people who try to hurt my precious people, rapists, perverts and those that gain power for selfish reasons. My hobbies are training, spending time with my Gigi and my friends. And my dream for the future is to surpass my parents and to become a great protector of the village. That is a wonderful dream, Naruto. It sounds like you want to be Hokage one day. Naruto shrugged. If my path as a shinobi leads me there, then I guess so. Me, Ria said as she put her hand up, wanting to have a go, making the others laugh at the cute little girl. Another time, Ria-chan, Makoto said, taking her daughter from her eldest and making the girl pout a little. So what do we do now? Naruto asked. Well, now we will break up for the rest of the day. We don't need to get familiar with one another since we all know each other. Tomorrow I want all of you to go to training ground 13 since I want to test how strong the three of you are. I have an idea on Itachi and a little on Naruto, but none on you, Enko. I want you all there at 9 a.m. Understood. Hi sensei, the three spoke, making Makoto smile. This is going to be an interesting experience. I can't wait to rub in Kushina's face, she thought, chuckling evilly in her mind. Since you are the only team who have currently graduated from the academy, the three of you are automatically made genin. I hereby announce us as Team 13, she declared, getting big smiles from Naruto and Enko and a small smile from Itachi. Nodding and smiling at them and saying goodbye, Makoto shunshined away with Ria in her arms, leaving the new genin team alone. In Hokage office, Minato sat behind his desk, putting a hand through his hair as he sat across from one of the few men in the elemental nations that could fight him one-on-one. On his right was Kakashi and on his left was Jiraiya, whilst Kushina was sat next to him. Over on one of the sofas was Sarutobi with his pipe in his mouth, as remained passive but on alert with their guests. The man in front of them was the fourth Raikage of Kumo and the man who Minato had many battle with in the past. Was a big man with dark skin and whitish blonde hair that was slicked back with a goatee on his chin. He wore his Raikage cloak and hat, whilst around his wrists were golden weights and around his waist was a large gold belt. Beside it there were two men. One had white spiky hair that covered part of his left eye and also wore a standard white Kumo flak jacket. On his back was a cleaver-like sword and on his right arm was the symbol for Black Lightning. To his right was a Caucasian man wearing the standard Kumo shinobi uniform but had bandages wrapped around the top of his head and his forehead protector covered his right eye. Welcome to the Leaf Village, Raikage-sama. I am happy that you made it here safe and sound. Minato spoke as snorted a little but thanked him nonetheless. Yes, well, since we are here, we may as well get right down to it. No sense it postponing this, he said as Minato nodded while Kushina kept her guard up. Since the attempted kidnap on her life by Kumo shinobis when she was younger, she had always been very weary around Kumo shinobi. To be frank, she did not trust them one little bit. I agree. I see no reason why our two villages should have to be at each other's throats nay more, and I am more than willing to put the past behind us if it mean the leaf and the cloud can finally see each other as allies other than enemies. I agree as well. As Reikage, the safety of my village is my top priority and it will always come first. If it means keeping any ridiculous wars from breaking out again, then I will do it. Minato nodded to that as well. Though he and A never exactly saw eye to eye, he was glad that as the Kage of his village he understood that alliances would truly benefit one another. Kumo had always been more militarized than Konoha, but then again Kumo had always been a very tightly knit and army-like village, whereas Konoha was a bit more relaxed in that sense but always kept their guard up. I am surprised that your brother B is not here. Normally the two of you are inseparable, Minato asked as A narrowed his eyes a little at the comment. B is a jinchūriki, therefore he knows that his place is to stay at the village and be a protector Kumo. As a jinchūriki he is a tool to be used to keep Kumo safe. The leaf ninja frowned at that but knew that was mostly how other jinchūriki were treated like. You know, I have always been curious to who the jinchūriki of the Kyuubi was. Since you know who Kumo's jinchūrikis are, do you not think we should know who yours is? That made everyone tense while Kushina and Minato looked at the man dangerously. Something that made the white-haired man tense and prepare himself. Kakashi did the same. That information is classified, Reikage-sama, Minato spoke in a calm and even tone. Oh, so do you believe that my village does not deserve to know of your weapon while you know ours? A said with his voice getting a little louder. Kushina slammed her fist on the table. Jinchūrikis are not tools that you can control simply because of what they contain. They are human beings who carry a great burden on their shoulders. A didn't look affected by the comment but instead just raised an eyebrow at her outburst while Minato smoothed her by rubbing small circles on her hand. You are oddly protective towards them, which leads me to guess that your jinchūriki is someone close to you. All the leaf shinobi tensed again and were mentally preparing themselves for some kind of confrontation since Kushina's face contorted to a look that showed she was ready to kill. Well, if you won't tell us, then perhaps it was a mistake coming here, since you cannot be honest with us when we are being honest with you. Honest? Kushina said, snorting. Like how you tried to kidnap me when I was a girl and yet tried to deny it. Yes, very honest. What my father did when he was Reikage does not fall to me. To be honest, I never really understood the big fuss about you Uzumaki. All you were ever good at was fuinjutsu and kenjutsu. The rest you were just mediocre at. Kushina looked like she was about to bow up at the comment A was making at her while the white-haired man just shook his head and face-palmed. Minato did the same thing, knowing this meeting was not going well at all. And Kushina had never liked each other and he knew it was a mistake bringing her to this meeting. Perhaps coming here was a mistake, said standing up from his chair, making everyone else stand up as well. Perhaps we can speak more of this tomorrow. Let's keep a cool head, think on it tonight and then resume tomorrow the details of the alliance, Minato offered, since he really wanted some kind of treaty to be formed between their two villages which could stop any confrontations from happening in the future. Minato did not wish for another war to break out. He wanted to keep the children of the village to have to succumb to that path. A scoffed but nodded nonetheless. Tomorrow we will continue this. Until then we shall take up residence in the Golden Leaf Hotel, he said as Minato nodded. A then jumped through the window, making his departure from the meeting. The white-haired man sighed before giving Minato a small smile. Sorry about the window. It's okay. We know of a few people who tend to not use doors, Minato said, motioning to Jiraiya, who scratched the back of his. The white-haired man nodded and walked out through the door with the other man following behind him. When the door closes, everyone breathed easily despite how badly the meeting went. Well, that could have gone better, Kushina said as she checked her nails as everyone playfully glared at her while she whistled innocently. With Team 13. Night began to fall as Naruto, Enko and Itachi sat at Ichiraku's ramen while Shizune sat to the side of them with Mito and Eiji by her side. She was looking after the children since after the meeting with the Reikage, many of the clan heads were having a get-together. Mito and Eiji sat on their seats playfully swinging their legs with noodle hanging from their lips while Naruto had little Mina seated on his lap, who was now almost a year old and was clapping her hands as Naruto fed her a little bit of ramen. Those of Uzumaki blood just naturally like ramen, no matter how young, Shizune commented as Itachi and Enko nodded in agreement. You love ramen, don't you, Mina-chan? Naruto said to his baby sister, who just nodded her head and gave him a smile showing the few teeth she had. Ah, she is so sweet, aren't you, Munchkin? Anko said. Despite being a very tough and tomboyish girl, even she had to admit that little Mina was adorable. Naruto smiled at the interaction between Mina and Anko while Itachi smiled at the scene. Naruto then felt a pull on his sleeve only to see Mito and Eiji looking at him with big eyes and holding their arms out. Naruto had a strange look on his face as he stared down at his two siblings. Despite loving them both, the whole thing with his parents and their attention was due to the twins, and in all honesty he had been a little distant from Mito and Eiji, especially Mito since she was very clingy towards him and just wanted to follow him everywhere. Mina, despite nearly being one, was showing the same signs. The two little girls just loved being with their big brother. Eiji was the same but not as clingy. Shizune saw his slight dilemma and picked up the two twins. No, I want Naru, Mito complained as Eiji nodded in agreement, but Shizune gave them a warm smile. No sweeties, it's time to go home. You both need your baths, she said, getting a disagreeable look on the twins' faces. Mito-chan, Eiji-chan, Naruto said, getting the twin attention. When I come home, I will try to read you a bedtime story, okay? He said, getting smiles from the two, making a small smile appear on Naruto's face in return. Shizune then put the two down and placed Mina into the stroller, who began to cry a little, not wanting to be out of her big brother's warm embrace. Naruto, are you coming? Shizune asked. Not just yet, Nei-chan. I going to have one more bowl. Alright, but be home soon. You might be a shinobi now, but you're still 9 and you need your sleep, she said. That goes for all of you too. Anko and Itachi nodded as well and then watched as Shizune gave Naruto a kiss on the forehead before leaving with Mito, Eiji and Mina back to their home. As they left, Naruto sensed the Anbus that were watching over them move to follow Shizune and his three siblings. They watched them go before Itachi turned to Naruto. Still trying to put space between them, aren't you? He asked as Naruto sighed a little and nodded. Anko looked at him weirdly. Why are you trying to put space between them? They are adorable, I just want to eat them up, she said while Naruto just didn't say anything. It's just some personal business, Anko-san, Itachi said, making Anko look at them both weirdly before she nodded. The trio sat there as they talked to one another, sometime also speaking to the ramen stand owner Tyuki, who the three saw as a nice middle-aged man who was happy to help any who needed help. He had a daughter their age, Ayame, who they had seen a few times. As Anko and Itachi spoke with Itachi, Naruto's sensor abilities picked up on something that he felt was irregular. He could feel the Kumo shinobi along with the Raikage enter the moment they entered the village. The Raikage stood out among the other two since his power was enormous, the same as his father and his Jiji. Naruto hopped of the stool and stood in the middle of the empty street as he looked in the direction of where the signature was coming from. Naruto-kun, what is it? Anko asked as she and Itachi followed him. One of the Kumo shinobi, he said, already putting the two on alert. He not at the hotel with the others. He over by the Hyuga compound. Why is he there? Naruto said aloud, making Itachi and Anko widen their eyes. You don't think he is going to kidnap a Hyuga, do you? Anko asked, since they were both aware that Kumo for some reason desired the Hyuga clan dojutsu, the Byakugan. Let's go check it out, he said as the two nodded and headed towards the Hyuga compound. It only took a few minutes before they arrived on one of the buildings opposite the Hyuga compound, and Naruto immediately began scanning the area for the Kumo shinobi he could sense. After a moment of search, he saw a black-clad figure against one of the outer walls, showing it to be the Kumo shinobi with the forehead protector covering his right eye. In his right arm, their eyes widened when they saw the Hyuga heiress, Hinata Hyuga, unconscious in his left arm. Anko, go warn my father. Now, he said as Anko did not need to be told twice before taking off as fast as she could. All the clan heads are at that gathering. He knew the head of the Hyuga clan would not be here, Itachi said as Naruto nodded. We have to buy some time. We can't let him get away. Naruto and Itachi took a deep breath, knowing this could go very badly, but they were shinobi of the lead now and it was their duty to protect the people who live there. As the Kumo shinobi was about to move, both boys threw shuriken towards him. The Kumo shinobi sensed them coming and dodged out the way and landed a little to his left. He looked to his left and his eyes widened a little when Naruto appeared a little in front of him with the shisui unsheathed and descending towards his head. He expressed interest in the black sword for a moment before he grabbed a kunai from his right pocket and blocked the strike, though buckled a little from the strength of the blade and saw his kunai crack in a few places. However, when he blocked and focused on Naruto, Itachi appeared to the side and grabbed Hinata from the man's grasp. They both heard the man curse loudly as Itachi jumped away as fast as he could, with Naruto doing the same. They regrouped with each other while protecting Hinata. "Give me the girl, brats. You don't want to piss me off," he said, taunting them. "We are shinobi of the leaf. We will not let you kidnap one of our own," Naruto said back. The man laughed before making a few hand seals. "Let's see if the you brats can live up to what you claim," he said. Raiden, Dendo Underi. A thin wire of lightning erupted from his midsection and shot all around him and toward Naruto and Itachi, aiming for their stomach as if wanting to bisect them. Naruto jumped in the air while Itachi managed to jump just before the man performed the jutsu. When Naruto looked at Itachi, he saw red and 3 tomos in each eye. Sharingan, he believed Itachi used it to predict the man's movement. As they jumped, the Kumo appeared in front of Naruto and kicked the small blonde and knocked him to the ground. He did the same to Itachi, but with the Sharingan activated, Itachi managed to dodge the swipes and kicked them and was giving him but could not attack due to having Hinata still in his arms. Itachi gritted his teeth a little since he could not fight back, but then heard Naruto's voice. "Water style. Water bullet," he said as balls of water made their way towards the Kumo ninja. The Kumo nin jumped out of the way, enabling Itachi to appear in the gardens of the Hyuga compound and lay her on the ground before going back to the battle. Returning, he saw Naruto with his blade redrawn, blocking quick and powerful strikes from the Kumo nin. Though Naruto was managing to block, the man's superior strength forced him to get pushed back and against a wall. The Kumo nin grinned before finding kunai being thrown towards him. Cursing again, he humped back and away from the kunai. Naruto and Itachi then stood next to one another and charged towards the enemy. Naruto threw punches and palm strike towards the Kumo nin, specifically trying to hit a few of the weakened pressure points that Tsunade and Shizune had told him about. Itachi meanwhile was trying to sweep his legs with his Uchiha style. They tried pushing him back, but the man was an adult and his physical strength was superior, so they used their smaller bodies to dodge his strike, which were quite slow, and were able to dodge them. Though he did manage to land a few hits on the two, he was surprised that they just kept getting back up and throwing strikes toward him. He swore he even felt a low-level genjutsu get put on him before he managed to quickly get rid of it with a pulse of chakra. The Uchiha, he thought, since he knew with the Sharingan, Itachi would try and put him in a genjutsu and trap him. The Kumo ninja started getting annoyed when the two genin did not let up before they both jumped back. Kaiten, Gokaku no Jutsu, Itachi called as a fireball erupted from his mouth and toward the ninja. The ninja saw it coming and jumped in the air to dodge it, but his eyes widened when he saw Naruto was now in front of him and had Shisui drawn out again. Naruto swung his blade just as the Kumo nin tried to push himself back. Despite the dodge, the tip of the Shisui sunk into the man and slashed him across the chest. Naruto landed next to Itachi, both who got in their stances again as the Kumo nin fell back a little and gripped his chest. "You little shit," he said as he checked his wound and saw it was shallow but went across most of his chest. "What are these kids? They are no ordinary children," he said and looked into their eyes. Itachi with his Sharingan and Naruto with his violet eyes gazed intensely towards him. "Raiden, Saji Farasha," he said as his two hands surged with lightning and put them together. He did not realize that Itachi had just coped his jutsu when he saw the hand signs. Just as the attack was about to be sent off, another strong chakra signature appeared around them and a blur shot out from the Hyuga compound and struck the Kumo ninja in the chest. "Hake Sanjuni Sho," the Hyuga cried out as he struck the Kumo nin 32 times in the chest. When it was over, Naruto and Itachi watched as the man stumbled back a little before blood spurted out of his mouth. His eyes rolled into the back of his head and dropped to the ground dead. They looked at the Hyuga and saw he looked just like the clan head Hiyashi, making them realize he was Hisashi Hyuga, the younger twin brother of Hiyashi Hyuga. Hisashi glared at the fallen man before he made his way over to the two boys and gave them a bow. "Thank you for protecting Hinata." They were about to respond before Naruto felt a large mass of multiple chakras appeared. Form there right they looked over and watched as Naruto's parents, Jiraiya, Tsunade and the clan heads appeared along with a few Anbu. Naru-chan. Itachi-kun. Naruto and Itachi winced a little when they heard their mother's voices and quickly found themselves glommed by Kushina and Makoto, who began to threaten check them over. Both saw the bruises that were beginning to form on their faces and glared towards the fallen shinobi. When the two mothers were told by the two boys they were okay, Kushina nodded and joined Minato, who was speaking to Hizashi with the others, while Makoto hung back with the boys. Naruto watched as Itachi went a little red, with Makoto still checking him over and was planting kisses on him. From where he could stand he could hear his mother saying they should check on the twins and Mina. Even now, they are all she can think about, Naruto thought a little bitterly as he looked down at the ground as he shook slightly. Shaking his head a little, Naruto began to walk away and just made his way home, while Itachi gave him a sad glance while Makoto just wondered what had him so down. Meanwhile Tsunade and Hiruzen, who had heard what Kushina said, looked at Naruto with sadness in their eyes. We need to talk to them about this, Sarutobi-sensei. Look at Naru-chan, even if he doesn't necessarily show it, the way they treat him is affecting him. I heard from Shizune that he is distancing himself from the twins, it's like he doesn't want them to get too close to him, said Tsunade, worry clear in her voice. While I agree with you, Tsunade-chan, the question still remains, how would we get them to see what they are doing to young Naruto? I doubt they even realize that their actions, or rather, inaction, is causing him any sort of grief. He replied, also worried about the young boy that he saw as a grandson. At moment the only thing we can do is wait and see if they will realize their mistake before it is too late.